I'm drawing infinite cards in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 401 Eternal Exile. The wind and frost are hunting, and the extremely freezing white air permeates every corner of the closed hall, and even the surrounding walls are frozen into ice. Kyle in the center of the hall completely turned into a human ice sculpture, frozen in the light blue ice, motionless, as if he had already cut off his vitality and was in a state of suspended animation. I want to sacrifice your head and blood to those dead Kree, so as to comfort their souls. Ronin's dark blue face, with a gloomy expression of murderous intent and tyranny, raised the cold star hammer in his hand, and aimed it at the head of the ice sculpture of Kyle. But before swinging the hammer, the ice sculpture suddenly trembled slightly. You haven't entered the suspended animation yet. Ronin's eyes widened in surprise, but it was Kyle who was frozen in the ice. The broken golden pupils of his eyes suddenly turned, staring straight at him, and the corners of his mouth moved strangely. Raised a wisp of arc not good. Ronin was in a hurry, and he didn't care about other things. He swung the star hammer down with both hands, and the high-tech war hammer buzzed at the same time, emitting a circle of shock waves, and the increase was strengthened on the surface of the hammer. With this hammer blow, even a steel building would collapse on the spot. Seeing that the star hammer was about to hit Kyle's head, the solid ice suddenly burst from the inside to the outside, and from the countless cracks in the solid ice, a wave of golden scorching flames gushed out impressively. Boom! The hull of the hall was completely filled with water vapor. One moment it was a freezing area with hundreds of degrees below zero, and the next moment it had turned into a high-temperature melting zone of thousands of degrees Celsius. The double sky of ice and fire. Frost melted into water at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then turned into nothingness from water vapor, and the figures of the two gradually appeared in the dissipated steam. The star hammer was once again blocked by Kyle, who was wrapped in flames. The shockwave passed through his body and hit the gate 20 meters away. The gate trembled and opened several huge cracks. A good weapon. With a frontal shock wave, Kyle felt a surge of energy and blood. He looked at Ronin calmly, and circles of golden flames rose from his feet, entangled on the whole body, and silver hair at this moment, the strands of hair spontaneously ignited and blazed. Kyle fully transformed into a pyro. This power belongs to the Asgardian race. You are not an ordinary human on Earth, Ronin roared angrily, clinging to the power, trying to push down the star hammer with all his strength, but was pushed down instead. Kyle, who was stepping forward, was pushed back and plowed two deep marks. The flames of thousands of degrees Celsius forged the star hammer. The star hammer made of special materials would naturally not fuse, but the heat wave crushed the previous cold air, and the high temperature was transmitted along the scepter to the handle. Zizzy, Ronin's hand holding the star hammer scepter was emitting black smoke. He resisted the high temperature and refused to let go of his weapon. Kyle held the star hammer, and just pushed Ronin out a few meters. In translation. I'm really a human, but I'm a human beyond the gods. Kyle smiled, turned his wrist, and a pillar of flame burst out from the left hand that was touching the star hammer. And Ronin was sent flying with the hammer. Pada. Ronin's body slammed hard on the carry throne, and the supreme stone chair with a certain sense of age was shattered to pieces. Ronin's burned hand was still holding the star hammer scepter tightly, and he struggled to prop up his body in a pile of rubble. With a wow, he spit out a mouthful of blood. Is this the end? Kyle's body was burning with golden flames, calmly looking at a generation of alien emperors, lying on the ground in extreme embarrassment and vomiting blood. Although Ronin seems to be weak, in fact, its physical strength and strength are already second only to the Asgardian Protoss, and the cold air has faintly reached the level of the Ice Giant's artifact. Broken Starfighter. It's a pity that I met Kyle, who has the power of the gods and has fully awakened the power of the fire department. It can be said that after Ronin was used to killing the weak, he suddenly suffered a heavy blow from the real strong. Congratulations, you have pushed me to this point. Ronin got up from the ground, with blood still remaining at the corner of his mouth. He grinned coldly. Do you know where this is? Isn't it your palace, the meeting hall, the place where you sacrifice the heads of your enemies? Kyle shrugged nonchalantly and said, Oh. By the way, starting tomorrow, this will be your exclusive tomb. Ronin straightened his body, knocked the star hammer scepter heavily on the floor, and said in a cold voice, This used to be the Kree Empire. The place where the supreme wisdom existed, but I killed her with my own hands more than 10 years ago. Take the Kree Empire completely in your own hands, Supreme Intelligence? Kyle's heart skipped a beat. A controller like Ronan is not a high-dimensional creature at the top of the universe. In the Marvel dimension, there are some powerful and difficult high-dimensional beings who have reached the peak of evolution as far as he knows. The Grandmaster is one, Dormammu is one, God King Odin is one, Star-Lord's father is one, Thanos is also one, and there are conscious beings such as Supreme Intelligence. There are also beings who are not involved in the world, such as observers, not to mention. Although Kyle has extraordinary power, he is still not sure that he can handle it, and even kills the high-dimensional life. Now that Ronan said that he had killed the Supreme Intelligence, he couldn't help but feel a little weird. You must really want to know how I kill the Supreme Intelligence. Ronan seemed to see Kyle's intentions, smiled coldly, then held the star hammer in both hands, placed it horizontally on his chest, and said inexplicably confidently, "The Kree Warhammer in my hand belongs to the Kree Empire. The single soldier artifact is called a universal weapon. Created by the highest technology of the Kree Empire, it can manipulate the energy of the universe, realize the decomposition, reorganization, and deformation of matter according to my wishes, and can launch shock waves, absorb energy, create force fields, etc. So, you use this warhammer to kill the Supreme Intelligence." Carlton suddenly became interested, staring at the hammer in Ronan's hand. Every civilized race has one or two devastating individual soldier's artifact. For example, Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet, Thor's Storm Hammer, Fire Giant's Eternal Flame. I didn't kill her, I exiled her. As soon as Ronan finished speaking, he suddenly pushed the Kree Warhammer forward, and said coldly, "Human Kyle, you have committed a felony. In the name of the leader of the Kree Empire, I sentence you to eternal exile." The Kree Warhammer flashed a white circle of light, and a mysterious and powerful force came, and the target rushed straight to Kyle on the field. Kyle's heart skipped a beat, his hair stood on end, and he felt a strong sense of crisis that something bad happened, which made him instinctively want to run and fuse energy to escape from the hall. But after all, it was still a beat. The moment the mysterious power enveloped Kyle, he was pulled into the narrow space, and disappeared from the hall, leaving only a round of imprints similar to magic circles on the spot. Hyperspace mind teleportation. Ronan looked at the imprint of the magic circle and muttered to himself, "Kyle, you are in the gap in the space, and you will be exiled forever and perish forever." Chapter 402 The Dimension of the Third Party. Boom. The time and space around are broken and rotated, and colorful lights are flashing randomly. Kyle was surrounded by a strange mysterious power, which did not cause any substantial damage to him. It was just like a rainbow bridge, a unilateral mandatory teleportation, which took him from the Supreme Hall of Crestron where he was originally to the unknown location. Space for teleport transfer. Every second is extremely long, as if traveling through hundreds of millions of light years. After half a minute, the transmission speed gradually slowed down until it completely reached the other side of the universe and stopped. After Kyle finished teleporting for a long time, he shook his head, and his chaotic consciousness instantly regained clarity. Kyle looked around and found that he was no longer in a place he knew, but was standing on an asteroid with uneven surface. Although it is an asteroid, its overall radius is only about, meters, but its gravity is astonishingly strong, nearly 20 times that of the Earth. The temperature is also surprisingly low, below zero, which is not suitable for ordinary life to survive. Kyle raised his eyes, and above his head was a dark and dead cosmic starry sky. The bright and twinkling stars seemed far away, but gave people an illusion of being very close. "Weiss, where's this?" Kyle asked aloud, and then his voice echoed back and forth in this vast space. The smartwatch beeped, and Weissy, who was always online, quickly said, "Master, I don't know either. I haven't caught any communication signals in the light years around here. I updated the map data of the Galactic Federation, and there is no such signal. The galactic coordinates of the place, it's still too small to underestimate Ronan. His Kree artifact actually has a teleportation ability similar to that of the Rainbow Bridge. Maybe we have been teleported to a remote galaxy outside the Galactic Federation." Kyle frowned slightly, which was undoubtedly a death sentence for others. But Kyle is different. There is a card space that stores a lot of materials, plus the fusion energy that can fly through the universe. Even if he is sent to the 9 realms, he will spend a little extra time to fly back at most. Thinking of this, Kyle ran the fusion energy, and glare lights rose up from his body surface. He kicked his feet hard, like a humanoid fighter, ignited from the asteroid in place, and started to fly at the speed of light at a random location. Kyle's fastest flying speed in the starry sky, the speed of light is already the standard, and when it reaches the maximum value, there are faint and frightening signs of exceeding the speed of light. Numerous starlights receded rapidly towards both sides, and Kyle asked Weiss to pay attention to the signs and signals of civilization. He flew exploratorily along the way, and it took him half an hour to fly. The longer he could fly, the more Kyle noticed something was wrong. He had spotted a little starlight as a target, and the flying one was enough to cross the central area of the Galactic Federation. The sense of distance from that starlight was still the same as what he saw before departure. No matter how much you fly, it seems that you can't reach that area in the distance. Kyle was sweating profusely due to the intense consumption of fusion energy in his body. Thinking of taking a break first, he landed on an asteroid in front of him. Scanning the planetary environment, Kyle was suddenly stunned, and said, "Weiss, have you noticed that the asteroid we are standing on is very similar to the original departure place?" "It's not very similar, Master. The planet we are on now is the planet we teleported to before. The gravity and magnetic field are exactly the same." Weezy also had difficulty understanding the current situation. Flying faster than the speed of light, flew for half an hour, and returned to the original place in a circle? Kyle touched his chin, as if thinking of the key point, and asked, "Weiss, how long have I been flying?" "According to the calculation of the system, it is 3 minutes. "No, it should be 3 or 10 minutes. Or 3 days. 3 years. Weezy's system seemed to have collapsed, and he hesitated. "So that's the case." Kyle took a deep breath, as if he understood something. His face was unprecedentedly dignified. Weezy said incredulously, "Master, what did you think of?" "I found that my system cannot accurately calculate the time elapsed here. Of course it can't be calculated, because this is not our original universe, but a dimensional dimension without the concepts of time and space." Kyle sighed, picked up a small stone on the ground, and threw it vigorously into the space outside the asteroid, and the stone disappeared without a trace in an instant. "I can't know how long it will be, I just feel that after a while." With a whoosh, Kyle grabbed the thrown-away small stone tightly in his hands, making his face more serious after verifying his guess. This dimensional world has no concept of time, so even Weezy cannot calculate how long it has actually passed after staying for a while. It may be an instant, or it may have passed for decades. There is no concept of space, so no matter where you fly, or how far you fly, you will eventually return to the original place. The small stones thrown will also return to the starting point. I didn't expect that in addition to Dormammu's dark dimension, there is also a mirror dimension exclusive to mages, and there are more third-party dimensions that are unknown. Kyle squinted his eyes. If there is a ring, maybe he can return to the original normal world through the mirror dimension as an intermediate springboard. And now, even he couldn't find a way to escape for a while. "Master, something is approaching us." Suddenly, Weiss sounded an alarm vigilantly. "Well, I also sensed it." Kyle looked sideways, and saw a mass of mercury-like liquid floating in outer space, landing on the asteroid, flowing towards him. Approaching to about 5 meters, the mercury liquid suddenly surged up, shaping into a female body. The details of the body gradually revealed, and soon transformed into a beautiful blonde girl. The girl was wearing an old white nurse's uniform. Her sapphire-like eyes were large, her slender eyelashes trembled slightly, and her pure and flawless smile was like an angel. Kyle looked at the person in front of him, trembled all over, and blurted out, "Lucy? Why are you here?" The blonde girl kept a sweet smile, and said to Kelvin, unexpectedly, "There are other creatures that will enter here. You're not Lucy. Who are you? Why did you turn into Lucy?" Kyle's joy dissipated, and he stared at the other party coldly, with a glare on his body crazily flowing with murderous intent. "Me? You can call me Supreme Intelligence." The blonde girl smiled, looked down at her appearance, and said slowly to Kyle, "Listen, I am not hostile. I am just a conscious body, and I have no external image. The incarnation is only based on what others think in their hearts. It is shaped by people, so talking like this should make you pleasing to the eye. No, I don't want you to be like her." When Kyle flipped his hand over, a beam of glare shattered the blonde girl on the spot. The consciousness body of the Supreme Wisdom was broken, but it quickly recondensed. This time she transformed into new star beauty. She spread her hands helplessly and said, "Is this the head office?" Chapter 403 The Method of Leaving the Dimension. It's almost there. Kyle looked at the Supreme Wisdom who had transformed into new star beauty, and did not choose to do anything again. He raised his eyebrows lightly, stared at the other party in surprise and said, "Wait, I seem to have seen her. You should be talking about the head of the new star civilization, right?" Supreme Wisdom was not surprised at all. He touched the fair skin on his face, twisted the silver bangs on his earlobe, and said with a smile, "She is a very courageous woman, and she is a worthy of respect. I used to She often uses her appearance to show the public. That's right, the new star heads I've seen are more than 10 years older than your current appearance." Kyle was expressionless and teased coldly. The face of the Supreme Wisdom was slightly stiff, silent for a moment, and said bitterly, "So it is like this. Has it been more than 10 years in the universe outside?" "I understand," Kyle Mingwu said. "You are the former leader of Kree civilization, the supreme intelligence who was rumored to be killed by Ronan." Ronan. Hearing this name, the Supreme Wisdom seemed to be stimulated, and his face instantly became extremely ugly. He clenched his soft fists and gritted his teeth regardless of his appearance. "That bastard, as a criminal of the Kree Empire, how dare you form a force against the Orthodox officials, and even use the Kree artifact to teleport me to this ghostly place?" Kyle spread his hands, and lightly replaced the knife. Obviously, he succeeded. "After claiming to kill you, Ronan became the unique ruler of the Kree Empire civilization. I was too careless at the beginning, and I didn't notice the internal contradictions of the Kree Empire in time." The Supreme Wisdom sighed helplessly, looked up at Kyle, and said brilliantly, "Then who are you? I noticed it just now. Your body possesses a strange and powerful energy, much like a human woman I met when I was the ruler of the Kree Empire more than, years ago. Human woman, similar fusion energy?" Kyle became interested and asked, "Just call me Kyle. Can you describe that woman in more detail?" "Kyle, it doesn't matter if I tell you," the Supreme Wisdom said slowly. "Her name is Carol Danvers, and she is an Air Force pilot on Earth. Then I have a mysterious energy, which is as high as 90.00% similar to the one you use. We Kree people originally wanted to control her and use that power for us, but it failed in the end." "Wait, aren't you also a human on Earth?" Having said that, Supreme Wisdom stared blankly at Kyle and asked inexplicably, "Congratulations, you got the answer right." Kyle narrowed his eyes, and there were other humans who had mastered the fusion energy earlier, which he did not expect. "This is too coincidental, right?" Kyle thought to himself, thinking about the connections. Fusion energy cannot be born out of thin air. Assuming that there was a woman in the past who had obtained a power similar to his present on the Earth, it means that there is a unique primer on the Earth. The Supreme Wisdom sighed softly. The Earth is really a place full of magic and miracles. Human beings are really a race that constantly brings surprises to people. So, Kyle was very humble, chinned silently, and suggested, "Since we have a common enemy, Ronan, then you and I can cooperate and find a way to leave this place together." "Leave?" The Supreme Wisdom was taken aback, then shook his head and said, "Since you have entered here, don't even think about leaving, otherwise I would have returned to the original universe dimension." Kyle was not discouraged, and continued, "What exactly is this place?" The Supreme Wisdom replied earnestly, "As you can see, there is no time and space, and even other superfluous substances, but only the construction area of pure energy, not forming a complete dimensional dimension that can breed life. Such dimensional dimensions are sandwiched between countless time and space. In the gap is a place that doesn't exist, and I don't know how Ronan found it." Kyle looked at her in surprise, and asked in confusion, "You are the Supreme Intelligence, the pinnacle of conscious life, and even you can't leave this dimensional area." "I've only lived a little longer. A person with a strong mind can control the mind of any creature. The power of the mind is enough to cross the universe and the starry sky. Other than that, it's not much better than you with an extraordinary body." The Supreme Wisdom's tone was full of helplessness, and then said bluntly, "Let me tell you the truth. There are only two ways to leave the unknown dimension, you say?" Kyle nodded. The Supreme Wisdom stretched out a finger and said with a seductive smile, "The first method is to abandon your original body and fuse your soul thoughts with the pure energy here. Over time, you will become the master of this place, with detached dimensional boundaries, powerful forces that penetrate into other dimensional dimensions. Don't mess with me. If there are no disadvantages, I'm afraid you would have done it yourself." Kyle sneered at this, and when the other party said the first method, Dormammu's name instantly appeared in his mind. "Where there is loss, there is gain," the Supreme Wisdom continued. After obtaining the power of this dimension, your soul consciousness will assimilate with this dimension. Dimension. Because this dimension is your body, I knew it, Kyle sneered again and again, and Dormammu still knew it. While assimilating with the dark dimension and becoming the invincible master, it was accompanied by endless loneliness and wildness. This is equivalent to giving you a cage as big as the world, allowing you to live alone in it forever. The second method is simple and easy to say, but difficult to say, the Supreme Wisdom said softly, using the ability of interstellar teleportation. There is no boundary wall to break the dimension, but it can be used as a springboard to jump directly back to the original universe. If it was me before, I can do this at will with the help of the carry artifact. But I don't have any tools at the moment, and I have nothing to do with my powerful mental power. After listening to Kyle, he also felt helpless. The teleportation ability has made a big circle, and finally came back here. The Supreme Wisdom is short of the carry artifact, and Kyle is only short of a mage's ring if he didn't have the suspension ring to open the mirror space, and the artifact to open the rainbow bridge. He would also be unable to perform teleportation. In this dimension, only you and I survive, and you will be my neighbor in the days to come. I will give you this planet formed of pure energy, and I will live on the next planet. After the Supreme Wisdom finished speaking, he waved goodbye and flew to a slightly larger planet. Master, what should we do now? Weesey, who transformed into a watch, said. What else can I do? Stay here first, let me think of a way. Kyle also felt a little weird when he looked at the bare energy planet and the asteroid not far away. 1 or 2 hours ago, he was still fighting the villain Ronan in the Galaxy Alliance, but now, he actually wants to spend the rest of his life with a conscious body in an unknown dimension? Chapter 404 Assimilation is the Master? In the unknown dimension. SHHHHHH, the ear-piercing and sharp sonic booms never stopped, driving the gusts of wind to howl and wreak havoc. Converted back to the Mercury-like conscious body, the Supreme Intelligence, lying lazily in a crater of an asteroid, you can see a human-shaped colorful streamer flying continuously in space. He turned back and forth in this vast and boundless area at the speed of light, trying to find a breakthrough like a headless chicken. The remaining trails of light are even intertwined internet in the space region. I do not know how long it has been. The human-shaped streamer reached the superluminal speed, sank into the end of the other shore, and disappeared without a trace. Huh? Supreme Wisdom was stunned, looking around the silent starry sky, secretly surprised. Could it be that guy succeeded? Before it finished speaking, light and sonic booms appeared from the other side of the space again. Supreme Wisdom looked at the human-shaped streamer rushing towards him above his head, and couldn't help but let out a mournful cry. Damn it! Kyle, please stop. The streamer was very much like a comet, dragging its long tail of light, and landed on the planet where the Supreme Wisdom resides. The asteroid was shattered in an instant, turning into countless colorful pure energies and overflowing everywhere. My fifth favorite residence, it's gone, it's all gone. The Supreme Wisdom floated in midair, and the consciousness group writhed violently, full of gnashing of teeth with anger. After smashing the planet, the colorful streamer stopped its inertia and slowly stopped in midair. After the dazzling light dissipated a little, it finally revealed the inner human youth body. Kyle waved his hand towards the conscious body and said, I'm sorry, Zayahu, I've said it all. Without teleportation, don't try to break through this area with extreme speed movement alone. Also, I am Supreme Wisdom, don't call me Zayahu, Supreme Wisdom said righteously. Kyle shrugged and said uninterestedly, I'm not trying. Maybe there's a place here that is unstable and can accidentally break the dimensional boundary wall. It's useless. As I said, there is no space here, that is, the concept of distance. Even if you search all over, it is impossible to find the end of the dimension area and the boundary wall. The Supreme Wisdom sighed, gave up persuasion and said, forget it, even if I say it 100 times, you still don't give up. Just keep trying, and one day you will give up. After all, the life and time is endless. After the Supreme Wisdom finished speaking, it simply stopped talking to Kyle and flew slowly to another planet. When it met such a troublesome human being, it could finally experience the true signs of the passage of time. It's not a bad feeling. After the Supreme Wisdom left, Kyle did not try to fly again, but returned to the planet that first descended, sat cross-legged on a surface, and held his chin in thought. After coming to this dimension, the original world does not know how long it has passed, maybe only half a minute, maybe half a year, or half a century. There is no concept of time, that is, The time spent in this dimension cannot be calculated and perceived. Even if it can be calculated, this time is not accurate and does not match the original universe. Kyle's flight escape plan, not tens of thousands of times, I'm afraid there are thousands of times. But there is still no progress. On the contrary, it is more handy to manipulate and use the fusion energy. Flying faster than the speed of light in outer space has become more and more proficient, and will not overshoot by a few light years because of carelessness. Weiss, have you made any progress there? Kyle looked at the surface of the planet not far away, where a new signal tower was built, which was 10 meters high, and invested a lot of technological products in Krypton gold energy stored in the card space, with WEC as the built-in letting system deformation structure made. According to WEC's calculation theory, the signal can go directly to the Earth and the new star of the Galactic Federation. Maybe it can be used to send a distress signal to the original dimension. WEC responded, there is no breakthrough for the time being. Signals of any frequency can only reverberate in this closed dimension, and it is impossible to send out even a letter of information. Yes, this is really troublesome. Kyle didn't expect that being trapped in one dimension, it would be so difficult to return to the universe of the original dimension. Even him who has mastered fusion energy, WEC who is the top product of technology, and the supreme wisdom of the biological mind-body, the three seem powerless. This also gave Kyle a new understanding of dimensions. The reason why creatures in other high-dimensional spaces cannot invade low-dimensional spaces at will is because the boundary wall is difficult to break or even find. Could it be that you really want to follow the path of Dormammu, abandon your body, and use your soul consciousness to assimilate with the energy of this dimension? Kyle muttered to himself, and suddenly put his left hand on the surface of the planet, closed his eyes gently, and drove away the distracting thoughts in his mind to become clear. I saw the divine power of the fire department and the mysterious light energy on his body. The instinctive combination of the two became fusion energy, attached to the surface of his body, flowing back and forth, and finally down the arm. The palm of the hand spread out in circles on the surface of the asteroid. Colorful ripples. Ripples of light covered a planet of pure energy crystallization, and Kyle seemed to start assimilating with the asteroid he was in. Master, what are you going to do? Weiss's voice sounded in surprise. The signal tower quickly transformed into an Autobot, the engine was ignited, and he left the asteroid where Kyle was, watching from a certain safe distance in space. A Quicksilver consciousness floated over from a distance and stopped beside the Autobot. The Supreme Wisdom said, it seems that your master has already chosen that path. Give up the body and become the invincible master who is eternally bound here. How could it be? Weiss clenched his metal fists and stared at Kyle, who was integrated with the energy planet. He still couldn't believe that the man in front of him would end up on that road. There is nothing wrong with this. For many creatures, this is also a cosmic opportunity. The Supreme Wisdom has lived for thousands of epochs, and has long seen through people's hearts, and said indifferently, although I abandoned everything I had before, I gained the power, longevity, and absolute control that others dream of. Weiss shook his head and retorted firmly, what do you know? For the current master, things like strength and longevity are no longer dreams, but goals that are within easy reach. He who pursues perfection will never choose to give up his original intentions, everything in the dimension. Then let's wait and see. Supreme Wisdom was not angry, and said lightly. As time went on, Kyle almost turned into a little light man, emitting extremely dazzling light in this dimensional area, and the energy planet below also turned into a round of light ball, and the energy breath of the two was completely integrated into one. All scenes seemed to be developing rapidly in the direction of assimilation. With a sound of boom, the entire energy planet suddenly disappeared, as if being absorbed. It evaporated into nothingness out of thin air. Kyle, glowing with glare, was suspended in the open space, staring at an extra card in the card space with a dazed expression. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405 Unlimited Draw Cards. Master, Weiss rushed towards Kyle in surprise, and when he saw that his body was still there, he grinned and revealed a row of metal gears. I knew that you would never choose to give up your body. Of course, I won't be the second Dormammu. Kyle smiled. If he gave up everything he once had, as well as the superhuman body he has evolved to today, it would be really hard to think about it. What's going on here? You obviously use the energy in your body to assimilate the planet, and you absorbed the entire energy planet. Why do you still have a human body, and the body doesn't show any signs of assimilation?" Supreme Wisdom stared straight at Kyle. His extraordinary thinking and consciousness froze, and he couldn't use his own cognition to understand what happened just now. Kyle calmed down and asked, "Who said the energy planet was absorbed by me? Without absorption, where did the energy planet just now go?" The Supreme Wisdom is unclear, so it can be perceived that the pure energy crystal just now has indeed completely disappeared from this dimension. "It was taken away by me." Kyle smiled faintly, looked at the Supreme Wisdom who wanted to continue to ask, shrugged ahead of time and said, "The details are business secrets, so I can't tell you. I can only tell you, I might have found it, way to get out of here." After Kyle finished speaking, he took a deep breath and sank into the card space. There was a brand new purple card hanging quietly in the air, Pure Energy Crystal, a pure energy crystal the size of an asteroid purple item card. A crystal formed by the combination of pure energy, with the size of an asteroid, which can be developed and excavated into electrical energy, light energy, heat energy, etc. Powerful creatures can properly absorb this pure energy to enhance their body and consciousness. At the same time, their body and soul will assimilate with the dimension that produced this energy, and they cannot stay in other dimensions for a long time. After absorbing a certain amount, they will be forced to become that dimension lord of the world. Current status, can be summoned as an entity. It's still possible to do this. Kyle was speechless, as if he had accidentally opened the door to a new world. He didn't expect that after adjusting the assimilation frequency of the energy in his body and the planet, he could directly read the card to extract the energy planet. Moreover, the card level of this pure energy group is ridiculously high. As for the location dimension area, there is nothing, but the most indispensable thing is pure energy. The idea came out from the card space, and Kyle quickly looked around, looking at the thousands of large and small energy clusters suspended in the dimension, and the broken golden pupils suddenly shone with green excitement. This is a resource wealth that has been unearthed since ancient times. "Kyle, do you think there is a way to get out of here?" Supreme Wisdom couldn't hide its excitement and asked Kyle. Kyle nodded, and said confidently, "I can't be sure of it yet. However, I finally see the dawn of hope. Next, I need to use the energy planet in this dimension." After some consideration, the Supreme Wisdom finally chose to believe in the human youth, and responded, "No problem, just leave me a foothold. When you find a way to leave here, I hope you can take me away by the way. Any conditions can be put forward for the transaction, can." Kyle agreed to come down, looked at the surrounding energy planets, and picked the next extraction target to fly at extreme speed. As a prelude to the assimilation of the frequency modulation, mark your own breath and imprint on the energy planetary cluster, and then do not attract it into the body, but directly extract it into a card. Kyle repeated this step, turning into a planetary predator, transforming the energy clusters of unknown dimensions into high-level cards one by one. In it, there is plenty of time. Kyle was not in a hurry at all. Under the card drawing process, the energy planets in the vast dimensional area continued to decrease sharply, and soon the vast space became dark and dull. On the other hand, in the material area in the card space, the number of purple item cards is constantly increasing. 10, 100, 500. It wasn't until 607 cards were drawn that Kyle stopped his frenzied predatory behavior. It wasn't that the energy clusters in the dimension area were exhausted, but that the dimensional dimension had lost a large amount of pure energy, and there were faint signs of collapse and self-destruction. But this is already an unprecedented huge gain. In the card space, the incarnation of Kyle's mind, looking at the neatly arranged purple cards in front of him, there are more than 1,000 cards in total, densely suspended in the air, all of which glow with bright and attractive purple luster. The wealth accumulated by the Carl family on the Earth for half a century, that is, blue item cards, Krypton gold, is already an incomparably rich country's resource wealth. But now, there are more than 600 purple item cards. This resource can easily buy a civilized planet. Sacrificing 10 purple quality cards can directly draw 3 types of cards starting with purple quality. That is to say, I can draw purple quality cards, times, and there is even a high probability of bursting out golden cards. It's still Kyle. Thinking of this, it's hard to calm down for a while. He doesn't have many purple quality cards, items, abilities, and creatures that have reached this level all have powerful values beyond the ordinary. The purple card must be a boutique. No, what am I thinking about? The most urgent thing is to pray for a way to leave this dimension. It would be great if I could draw out a hanging ring, although Kyle thought so, it was actually unrealistic, because the hanging ring had not yet reached the height of purple quality, and it was not within the scope of this card draw and shipment. No matter what he draws out, it won't help him much now, as long as he can draw out interstellar teleportation objects. Kyle prayed in his heart, rubbed his palms together, and after taking a deep breath, he first selected 100 purple item cards and put them into the sacrifice. Purple quality 10 consecutive draws, you sacrificed pure energy crystals 100, the extraction is successful. Congratulations, you have obtained Life Extension, X2, Arrogant Beast Larva, Lustful Beast Larva, Gluttonous Beast Larva, Greedy Beast Larva, Lazy Beast Larva, Raging Beast Larva, Envious Beast Larva, Essence Devouring Beast Larva. Kyle, there are so many pitfalls, I don't know where to start. First of all, the common life-enhancing cards popped up again, and there were still 2 cards. Secondly, why are the remaining 8 cards all biological cards? Is this a character explosion? Or is bad luck playing tricks on him? It's not to stay here, but to draw out teleportation items or ability cards that can leave here. Forget it, let's take a look, maybe the larvae that are drawn out have the innate ability to teleport. Kyle could only comfort himself in this way, copied the 8 strange creature cards in his hand, and read them in detail one by one. Well, Beast of Arrogance, Beast of Lust, these are enough 7 sins. Is this the so-called series card set? Chapter 406 Mastering the 7 Sins and the Yuan Devouring Creature. Arrogant Beast Larva, the evil beast spirit larva that masters the power of arrogance. Purple bio card. Beast spirits generally exist in a conscious body, like a cloud of black mist. When they're mature, they can transform into a monster-like physical body with sharp minions, powerful strength and physique. They are war creatures born purely for killing. Arrogant beast spirits are arrogant and conceited. They cannot move freely when they are young. They can only be fused with humanoid creatures with matching personalities. After fusion, they will randomly endow the creature with a natural ability, such as body strengthening, high-speed flight, and thunder control. Current status, entity summoning is available. The second one is exactly the same, Lust Beast Larva, the evil beast spirit larva that masters the power of lust. Purple bio card. Beast spirits generally exist as conscious bodies. Lustful beast spirits are lustful and lustful. They cannot move freely when they are young. They can only be fused with humanoid creatures that match their personalities. After fusion, the creature will be randomly given a natural ability, such as absorbing negative emotions, mind control, mind reading, etc. Wait. Current status, entity summoning is available. Third, Gluttonous Beast Larva, the evil beast spirit larva that masters the power of gluttony. Purple bio card. Beast spirits generally exist as conscious bodies. The gluttonous beast spirit has a lustful personality, and cannot move freely when it is a larva. It can only be fused with a humanoid creature that matches its personality. After the fusion, it will randomly endow the creature with a natural ability, such as extreme demonic power, nibble absorption, black hole mouth, etc. Wait. Current status, entity summoning is available. There are also similar 4th, 5th, 6th, and up to 7 cards, which just make up the 7 sin beast spirits. Kyle was amazed. The 7 cards in his hand were indeed the same series of creature cards. They were prefixed with arrogance to jealousy. They corresponded to the evil beast spirit creatures of the 7 sins. Even the card attributes were similar. These evil beast spirits, similar to the symbiote venom that was just drawn out at the beginning, are all in a larval state, and they can only survive by attaching to other creatures first, which can strengthen the host's body and give them powerful superpowers. After Kyle read them all, his eyes focused on one of the creature cards, Lazy Beast Larva, the evil beast spirit larva that masters the power of laziness. Purple bio card. Beast spirits generally exist as conscious bodies. Lazy beast spirits are lazy and inert. They cannot move freely when they are young. They can only be fused with humanoid creatures that match their personality. After the fusion, they will randomly endow the creature with a natural ability, such as universal teleportation, space gate, slow aura, etc. Wait. Current status, entity summoning is available. Sin of Laziness can give the host superpowers of teleportation and space spells. The mind exited from the card space, and Kyle's eyes flickered. He stood up from a planet, flipped his left hand, and immediately drew out a purple creature card. After the physical summoning, The card disappeared from the hand, and then a massive black mist suddenly surged out. The small black misty creature curled up with an intangible body. After seeing Kyle next to it, it floated forward lazily, lowered its posture and respected, "Follow your call, laziness will serve you, my lord, are you lazy?" Kyle looked up and down at the misty creature, looked down at it and said bluntly, "Can you attach to me and use the teleportation ability?" "I'll try." The lazy beast spirit tried to rush forward, lingering around Kyle's side for a few times, backing away in fear and regret. "My lord, forgive me for not being able to do it. You don't have a trace of lazy character in you. I am used to it, and there is a power in my body that is far beyond mine, and the double exclusion makes it impossible for me to enter your body. I understand. You go back." Kyle sighed, waved forward, and the lazy beast spirit was immediately transformed back into a card by him, and thrown back into the card space. The lazy beast larva needs to parasitize on the host in order to barely use its teleportation ability. But where can he find a lazy creature right now? Can I just keep pumping? Wait, Kyle suddenly remembered that there was another biological card that had not been checked, so he pulled it out directly, and the card was sandwiched between his fingers. Essence Devouring Beast Larva, monster larva that can devour dimensions. Rare purple ability card. I didn't notice just now, this is actually a rare purple creature card. Kyle opened his eyes wide, held the card, and continued to check the introduction in detail. The devouring beast combines a cute and harmless appearance with a super devouring ability. It is an extremely dangerous dimensional creature. It is an oviparous organism, with tentacles and sharp teeth in its mouth. It can devour almost all objects, and its stomach is connected to another space, so it will not get fat no matter how many objects it swallows. The Yuan Devourer's intelligence is relatively low, and it can only understand simple instructions, but cannot speak human words and distinguish right from wrong. Current status, entity summoning is available. A creature that devours everything? A cute appearance? What does it look like? Kyle's curiosity became stronger. He pondered for a moment, and physically summoned the creature card in his hand. Just take a look and you're done. With a flash of light, a palm-sized orange creature suddenly appeared, jumped on Kyle's left shoulder, and licked his face affectionately with its tongue. Kyle looked at the little creature on his shoulder as if he had been hit. His mouth twitched slightly. Is this an extremely dangerous Yuan devourer? That was clearly a cat. To be more precise, it was an orange cat cub, less than 3 months old. When Kyle looked at it, the orange cat cub yelled, "Meow, let me see your mouth." Kyle pondered, pinched the orange cat's neck, raised it in front of him, and opened the cat's mouth with his little fingers. Sure enough, it's not an ordinary earth breed. Kyle's eyes are slightly bright, and there is surprisingly no fishy smell in the cat's mouth. There are new sharp teeth and small tentacles on the inner wall of the mouth, and the throat is hollow, with mysterious suction, as if a miniature version of a black hole. Acue, the orange cat cub was played with by Kyle for a while, and suddenly sneezed, falling off his hand and falling into his arms. With a twitch of the nose, the orange cat cub seemed to smell something, and jumped excitedly towards Kyle's lower abdomen. When it opened its mouth, several tentacles opened in response, and it bit directly at Kyle's lower body without hesitation. Kyle felt a chill in his lower body, as if something in his body was bitten hard. He couldn't help but hurriedly grab the body of the orange cat cub, and pulled it away from his body. Meow. The moment the orange cat cub detached from Kyle, one of the tentacles, with a dazzling blue gem wrapped around its end, was pulled out from his lower abdomen little by little. Can't it? The moment the sapphire appeared, Kyle held his breath, his eyes and mind seemed to be sucked in, and his body was frozen in place like a sculpture. That is a space gem that has not been seen for many years. At the end of World War II, after Kyle left the Earth through the space gem and opened the teleportation beam, it disappeared mysteriously. Kyle thought it was left on Sokka, but he didn't expect it to be hidden in his body, and it hadn't left the body for half a century. He suddenly realized where, apart from the divine power of the fire element, the source of the mysterious light energy that formed the fusion energy came from at the same time. Kyle is very sure that his group will be able to leave this dimension area soon. Chapter 407 Space Gem, Ronan's Death. The capital of the Carey Empire, inside the Supreme Hall. Ronan slumped on the throne with a pale face, holding the Kree hammer with one hand and the armrest of the seat with the other, panting heavily, sweat dripping from his dark blue forehead. Obviously, after a fierce battle with an absolute disadvantage, Coupled with the mandatory interstellar teleportation, the strong physique of the yellow South African was a bit too much. That human man named Kyle, Ronan still had lingering fears. The other party was too strong, and the impression it brought him was no less than that of the woman called Captain Marvel that he met on Earth back then. Even, faintly surpassed. Tap tap tat. The elite guards of the Kree Empire heard the movement of the fighting, and they were belatedly entering through the huge damaged gate. The chief guard of the Kree Empire, holding a spear, looked around the hall after being baptized by freezing, burning, and pure physical destructive power. He couldn't help looking eagerly at Ronan, who was seated, lowered his head and asked, "Ronan Master Non, what happened? Are you okay?" "Of course I'm fine. What can an intruder do against me?" Ronan restrained himself, snorted coldly, and said with a majestic face, "Of course it is. No one in the entire Galactic Federation region can beat you, Lord Ronan." The chief guard quickly nodded in agreement, and then said with a look of embarrassment, "I have something to report. That, leave Carey Planet. The Carey interstellar fleets that went on an expedition, the interstellar ships have now returned one after another. More than half of the ships in this expedition were destroyed, the guards of the Kree Legion suffered heavy casualties, and even the commander who led the expedition was buried in outer space." "Okay, I already know." Ronan's face was watery, with anger in his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. The head of the guard asked solemnly, "Master Ronan, we provoked Nova like that before, and now that the Carey Legion has suffered such a serious loss, what should we do if the Nova Legion takes the opportunity to counterattack?" The other armed guards were all awe-inspiring when they heard the words, and the hall fell into deathly silence. Ronan held the Kree Warhammer tightly, and said in a deep voice, "What are you panicking about? Help me to inform Titan Thanos, and say, I know the whereabouts of the cosmic spirit orb. If he wants to get it, then immediately dispatch enough combat power. Come and help me." "Yes, I'm going to make contact and convey your request." The chief guard took the order. As if knowing the urgency of the situation, he left the palace hall quickly. The remaining armed guards cleaned up the mess in the hall and relit the blue flame candle lamps on both sides of the hall. Cosmic Spirit Ball. Thanos, Ronan muttered to himself, feeling very depressed. If he had enough power to take the spirit ball from Kyle's hand, how could he be willing to give it to Thanos? Although Thanos' strength and influence are strong, Ronan also does not want to be a pawn, but an absolute master who can hold his destiny in his own hands. Have to rethink. Ronan was thinking about the future, when suddenly from the main hall under the supreme stage, many Carey guards exclaimed. Ronan was in a trance, followed the sound as if awakened, and saw that on the floor of the hall where the teleportation rune was still branded. Beams of subtle blue light glowed for no reason, falling on the original brand of the Kree artifact for teleportation. The beams, a blue beam of light formed in the center of the dimly lit main hall. The other end of the spatial beam of light breaks out from the void of the ceiling, as if connected to a third distant dimension. More than a dozen Kree guards were stunned, not daring to get close to the beam of light, and kept backing away to keep a safe distance. How could this be? This feeling is, Ronan opened his eyes wide in shock. As the blue beam of light tended to stabilize, the tall figure of a silver-haired human youth was reflected inside, and his body quickly returned from translucent to real. Kyle is no different from before, except that he has changed his clothes, his hair has grown a little, and there is still a little orange cat on his left shoulder. The blue light beam dissipated inch by inch, and the hall returned to its original gloomy state. Kyle looked around the hall, confirmed that he had returned to the original dimension, and after returning to the original Carey Hall, he took a long breath. God knows how many places they traveled by using the space gem, before finally returning to the universe of the original dimension seemingly precisely. Fortunately, the ending is good, and the original dimension of the universe, it seems that not much time has passed. It feels so good to be back. Kyle sighed with emotion, raised his head to meet Ronan's eyes on the throne, waved his hands, and said with a smile on the corner of his mouth, "Hi, Ronan, long time no see." "No. For you, it should be several minutes." You, how is this possible?" With Ronan's firm and indifferent heart, his face was pale at this time, his body trembled slightly, and he couldn't believe that what happened now was the truth. After being exiled to an unknown dimension, he was able to return here safe and sound. Is the dimension area so easy to break through and cross over? What kind of creature dares to enter the Supreme Hall privately? The other Carey guards in the hall didn't know that the two had already had a contest. Seeing Kyle's sudden appearance, They stepped forward with weapons in their hands and shouted vigilantly, trying to arrest Kyle, an outsider. "Do you dare?" Kyle kept a smile on his face, and casually glanced at the Kerry guards who were surrounded. The Kerry guards stopped in unison and looked at each other. From the oppressive power of the spirit and the majesty of the king. "Did you bring her out too?" Ronan couldn't sit still anymore, and stood up from the throne in anger and fear. Meow. The orange cat cub on Kyle's shoulder, gasping sleepily, opened its small mouth, and a mass of quicksilver-like consciousness emerged from between its teeth. "Do you still recognize me?" Immediately afterwards, a calm and erratic voice suddenly sounded in the sea of consciousness of the Kerry guards. This cold and indifferent voice was only aimed at Ronan, and you, Ronan the sinner. Ronan gripped the Kree warhammer hard, his knuckles turned white and rattled. This was the last situation he wanted to see. The prerequisite for Ronan to become the Kree Emperor is to get rid of the Supreme Wisdom, and at this time, the safe return of the Supreme Wisdom undoubtedly pronounced the shattering of his Emperor status. Supreme Wisdom. The Kerry guards in the hall looked at the conscious body in amazement. The weapons in their hands fell to the ground, and soon their knees fell to the floor. They quickly turned around and said in a panic, "Supreme Wisdom, we are all persecuted by Ronan. Since the Supreme Wisdom has returned, it is destined to overthrow Ronan's tyranny." "Yes, that's right," looking at the guard who was his subordinate a moment ago, but now he has turned against him and became the Supreme Wisdom. Ronan's eyes turned red, staring at the Supreme Wisdom, and raised the Kree warhammer in his hand. "Here I continue to exile." Before he could finish speaking, he saw a stream of colorful light passing across the hall, as if thunder and lightning flashed past. Kyle, who was originally standing in the hall, had come to Ronan, with fusion energy lingering all over his body, and his strengthened and amplified hands strangled Ronan's neck. "Sorry. The same move doesn't work for me," Kyle whispered calmly, and with a flow of fusion energy, the palm of his hand suddenly exerted force, completely crushing Ronan's neck. He didn't even give the opponent a chance to use the artifact, killing him with one blow. Chapter 408. Although his neck was crushed by Kyle, Ronan hadn't died immediately. His eyes were so wide that they almost protruded, full of resentment, and he seemed to be trying to say something, but as the vitality dissipated, his consciousness darkened. Shen, the Kree warhammer fell to the floor with a clang. After Ronan let go of the warhammer, his body also fell limp from Kyle's hands, obviously dead. Watching Ronan being killed in an instant, the Kerry guards lowered their heads submissively, held their breath in horror, and did not dare to make a single sound. The consciousness floated in the hall, and said in the guard's heart, "You have all seen it. The criminal Ronan has received his due trial, and the Kree Empire will return to the peace and prosperity of the past. Go and inform the senior personnel of Kerry. Come here for the Imperial Council." Yes, Supreme Intelligence. The Kerry guards naturally did not dare to disobey, and quickly left the hall obediently. Mr. Kyle. According to the agreement, from now on, the Kerry Empire will treat you as the highest honored guest, and you are not allowed to start a galaxy war at will. The Supreme Wisdom has an extremely respectful attitude towards Kyle. If the former Ronan had seen it, he would have been shocked beyond measure. "As long as you don't provoke me, I have nothing to do with the Kerry Empire," Kyle said casually, threw Ronan's body back on the Supreme Throne, and waved his hand to the ground. "Fly into the hands." Seeing this, the Supreme Wisdom couldn't help but said awkwardly, That, Mr. Kyle, the Kree warhammer is an artifact inherited from our Kree civilization, and it needs to be held by the Kree to be truly effective." "Yeah, I know." Kyle touched the head of the orange cat on his shoulder, picked up the warhammer and passed it to his left shoulder. The orange cat was confused, and opened his mouth to swallow the whole Kerry warhammer. Kyle smiled and said, "That's the trophy I got from killing Ronan. Just feed it to my little Wong. It's over. When I meet this interstellar bandit, the artifact is gone." Supreme Wisdom slandered in his heart, but on the surface he smiled and said, "Of course, as Mr. Kyle likes, okay. I won't get involved in your Kree civilization, bye." Kyle waved his hand, running the fusion energy in his body. Circles of flames rose up with his body, and finally made a light jump in the starting style, leaving the original place and flying towards the sky outside the gate of the palace. Until the trail of light dissipated, the Supreme Intelligence body squirmed for a while, and sighed, "The human race is really incredible. The civilization of the Earth is afraid that it will rise completely and rapidly in the near future." The Galactic Federation, hundreds of millions of light years away. Near the Titan Galaxy, A gigantic spaceship the size of a planet, quietly ups and downs in the dark outer sky, like a steel wall in the universe. The extremely spacious cockpit of the interstellar spacecraft. 5 powerful alien creatures of different races, weapons, and shapes stood side by side in the hall with a faint oppressive aura, waiting for orders. Among them, there is a muscular monster as strong as a giant holding a metal giant axe, a dark woman in a battle suit holding a shining spear, and a white-haired old man wearing a wizard costume with his hands on his back. Death scythes, ugly undead creatures, and mysterious witches with cloaks and white ties. Titan 5 tigers. Everyone here is a starry sky powerhouse who can easily step Ronan under his feet at this moment. They all lowered their heads respectfully, looking at the high-tech seat in front of them, which was spraying with tail flames. The seat floats in the air in the room. As the chair slowly turns to the front, the person sitting on it is a burly and strong Titan man over 3 meters tall. He is wearing the usual Titan clothes, and his body is hard with a dark purple complexion. His whole body was filled with thrilling oppression and coercion. Thanos put his hand on his chin, tapped his face with his fingers, and said calmly and hoarsely, "So, that kid Gamora betrayed me," the Dark Woman said respectfully. "Master, according to the current situation, it should be. I suspect that she knows something about the Infinite Stones. She's been like this all the time, so it's not worrying." Thanos tapped the seat with his fingers, and without thinking much, he directly issued an order. "Superstar, you go and make Gem Opal intact. Bring it back to me." "Yes, Master," the Dark Woman nodded, holding a spear, raised her cloak, and exited the command room hall. The white-haired old man said slowly, "Master, there was news from the Carrie Empire just now. Ronan said that he has mastered the information of the Cosmic Spirit Orb, and now he wants to get your protection and assistance." Thanos didn't procrastinate, and said in a deep voice, "Then you go, Ebony Maw. Bring me the Cosmic Spirit Orb." "Understood. The mission must be completed." The white-haired old man bowed, his feet were off the ground, and he left the hall in a levitation and backwards. After the two left, the hall fell silent again. Thanos looked at the remaining 3 and said, "Is there anything else I need to know now?" "There are, masters," the muscular monster hoarsely said. "The dwarves have already finished making the gloves that can control gems, and now they are waiting for your acceptance." "Really? Has this day finally come?" Thanos grinned, and ordered, "Black Dwarf, go and get back the gloves for me, and kill all the dwarves by the way, leaving the Dwarf King alone, but it needs to be cut off. Which hand it forges in. I'll destroy the neutron star furnace, too." "I understand." The muscular monster picked up the giant axe, stomped on the floor dully, dragged its slightly bloated and strong body, and left the cab. In the hall, there are the last 2 subordinates left. "One more thing. About the Earth," the mysterious witch said. The undead creature said gloomily, "Coincidentally, what I want to mention is also the Earth." The 2 subordinates actually mentioned a place name at the same time, causing Thanos to pat his chin. "Tell me," the mysterious witch said, "last time, Loki, the second prince who came out of Asgard, had a conversation with his master. He is now leading the mechanical clan to the Earth, saying that he will bring you the Rubik's Cube of the universe. Come back and show your loyalty." The undead creature followed her words and said, "According to my investigation, the mages of the Earth have held the time gem for many years. In addition, recently, there have been traces of ether particles appearing on the Earth, that is, the gem of reality." "You mean, there are 3 infinity stones on Earth?" Thanos' face changed slightly. He got off his seat, stood up and looked down at his 2 subordinates. "Yes, Master. Loki may not be reliable. You can send me to Earth," the mysterious witch suggested. "I am also willing to go to Earth," the undead creature nodded at the same time. "Very good." Thanos was obviously in a good mood. He pondered for a moment, looked at his 2 subordinates, and said in a deep voice, Proxima Dark Knight, General Deathblade, "then you 2 should go, and help me bring back all 3 gems." "Yes." Proxima and General Deathblade looked at each other, then bowed to say goodbye and left. Maybe even Kyle didn't expect that Thanos would send his capable men to collect the infinite gems a few years earlier than before. A disaster sweeping across the starry sky is coming. Chapter 409 Nova's Highest Respect. Galactic Federation, Nova Empire. A streak of light was like a meteorite from outside the sky, sinking into the atmosphere faster than the speed of light. Before even the satellite defense system and the Nova Corps could react, the streamer turned a corner at an altitude of, meters. The speed gradually decreased, and rushed straight to the Star Palace, which is the political center of the Nova Empire. Go. Call. The streamer stopped abruptly when it reached the sky above the Star Palace, and as the light of fusion energy dissipated, it revealed Kyle in the space uniform inside. Alarm, alert. Alien intrusion detected. Only then did the intelligent defense system sound like a delay, and dozens of small aircraft swarmed towards Kyle, who was suspended in the air. Huh? Kyle raised an eyebrow. An aircraft came to Kyle and emitted a scanning laser. After the detection, it immediately released the alarm status and switched to a soft and gentle intelligent voice. Dear Mr. Kyle, welcome your return. The Nova head has been notified. Please let me be your guide. The other security aircraft scattered around, and only one of them remained. After Kyle nodded in agreement, the aircraft entered the guide mode and took him to the inner hall of the Star Palace building. As the political center of Nova, the Star Palace is completely barbaric compared to the ancient palaces of the Kree Empire. The building is completely made of metal and glass, and the atmosphere of advanced technological civilization flows everywhere. As soon as Kyle stepped into the lobby on the first floor, he saw the Nova female head of state, as well as several officers of the Nova Corps, walking out quickly in person. The new star head came to Kyle, and the wrinkles on his face stretched out with a smile. Mr. Kyle, welcome to the new star. It seems that you have received the news. Kyle saw their enthusiasm and said thoughtfully. Yes. The Nova head nodded, bowed suddenly, and said sincerely, Mr. Kyle, you killed Ronan and got rid of a great disaster for our Nova. Grateful. The senior officers of the Nova Corps also bowed to express their gratitude. That's unnecessary. Kyle waved his hand calmly and said, this is just a deal. For us, it's not as simple as a deal. The Nova head said with emotion. Ronan has done all kinds of bad things in the Galactic Federation, and he keeps breaking the peace agreement of the galaxy, trying to start an interstellar war. You killed him. The galaxy. The League will take that as a heroic feat. Hero, I'm tired of working on Earth, so don't get involved with the Galactic Federation. Kyle shrugged nonchalantly, looked around, and said, where are my people? The new star head of state smiled and said, they are all arranged in the reception room on the second floor. Take me there. Thinking about what to do next, Kyle couldn't wait. Star Palace, welcome room on the second floor. It can be seen from sitting in different sofa areas that there are obviously two groups of people here. One faction is headed by Kyle, namely Iron Man Tony, Magnetron Lorna, Pet Babo, and Slave Green Peak. One faction is headed by Star-Lord Quill, who are Dex the Destroyer, Groot the Treeman, Rocket the Brown Bear, and Gamora, the adopted daughter of Thanos. Rocket sat on the sofa with his arms folded, looked at Star-Lord, Dex, and Gamora, and bickered. Speaking of which, Groot and I are only for the bounty of the Universe Spirit Ball. Now the Spirit Orb is gone. Why should I be with you bums? Dex snorted coldly, and said in a deep voice, I'm here to avenge Ronan. Whoever is against Ronan, who am I to fight against? Then you should sit on the other side. Rocket's eyes drifted, and he gestured to Tony and others. That's right. Dex nodded, actually got up, left the sofa seat of Xingqiu and others, and sat down next to Tony. Okay, one more person is missing. Seeing this, Rocket spread his hands funny. Gamora said coldly, it depends on whether that man named Kyle can kill Ronan. If he has that strength, he may really be a great backer against Thanos. So, we are tied to them. Rocket showed a slightly puzzled expression. Being restricted and free is not what it pursues. It doesn't matter to me. Mr. Kyle is a human on Earth, and so am I. Quill seemed very natural. He had no fixed place in the Galactic Federation, and it didn't matter where he went. Gamora looked at the Rocket and made a suggestion. If you want to leave, you can go, but you have to be careful. You have already got involved with the Infinity Stones, and you know the secret of Thanos. Maybe they will come to you to kill you. Thanos' subordinate? How powerful. I, Rocket, have never been afraid of it. When Rocket was speaking, he patted the chest of the tree figure Groot. Groot, the tree man shouted. Gamora snorted and said, I admit that the tree man is very powerful, but compared with Thanos man, he is not in the same order of magnitude at all. That man has 5 tiger generals under him, and everyone's strength is higher than Ronan's. Better than Ronan. Rocket blinked, and couldn't help but take a breath. It thought for a while, and sat back on the sofa resignedly. Then stay with you. If those people come, you will block them from me. Don't worry, Mr. Kyle is here. Quill is obviously also a Kyle. On the Earth, the influence of the symbol of peace is really outrageous, and it has gradually become deified. Everyone was still talking. The door suddenly opened, and Kyle walked into the reception room at the front. "Boss," Lorna was still holding Babo in her hand, but when she saw Kyle, she jumped up immediately, threw Babo back on the sofa, and rushed forward in 3 steps at a time. "Godfather," Tony's tense face eased a little, and he put down the steel mask in his hand. He was ready to go to the Nemesis Empire for reinforcements at any time. With a smile on his face, Kyle hugged Lorna, and everyone else in the room stood up and looked at him expectantly. The head of the Nova Star stepped forward dignifiedly, and said slowly, "Everyone, Ronan has been killed by Mr. Kyle. According to the terms of the transaction, the arrest warrants of some of you criminals will be cleared, and you will be our Nova Star's first-class guests from now on. You can get the protection of the Nova Legion and various special permissions on the Nova. This is great for many people on the court. Losing Ronan's oppression and gaining the friendship of Nova Empire was a huge and surprising reversal. Especially Dex the Destroyer, who knelt on the ground immediately, kowtowed to Kyle a few times, and promised, "Mr. Kyle, you have avenged me, and no matter what happens in the future, as long as you say a word, I will pay you back. We'll do it. Get up." Kyle waved his hand, pulling Dex's body up. "Godfather, let's now." Tony looked at him, speaking nervously and excitedly. "It's been so many years. It's about time." Kyle smiled relievedly, turned to look at Quill, and said forcefully, "Quill, we're leaving now, and you will lead the way to Howard's planet. One of the long-cherished wishes for many years will finally come true one day." Chapter 410 Howard, Long Time No See. The Milky Way Alliance, Pico Star is located in a remote corner of civilization. This is a deserted planet that once experienced the prosperity of a new star, but due to the excessive population base of the local race, the energy and food in the planet were exhausted, and it eventually went to genocide. Since there is no energy collection on Pico, only the garbage of technological civilization from centuries ago is left. The races of advanced civilizations, and even interstellar hunters will not set foot here. Only some poor and wandering aliens are forced to helplessly live here. And today, this innocuous Picos once again ushered in a special extraterrestrial guest after a long absence. A skinny alien child with ragged clothes, carrying a backpack and rummaging through the garbage mountain, found a t-shirt that was still in good condition, and immediately put it on happily, as if it was already a gift from God, and put his hands together thanks to the sunset sky. At this moment, 2 starlights emerged from the sky. Under the suspicious eyes of the alien child, the starlight grew bigger and bigger, and finally turned into an Eagle starfighter and an Orange starfighter respectively. The 2 fighter planes continued to lower their heights, and finally hovered in midair and stopped slowly on the garbage mountain where the alien child was. The Orange starfighter cabin door opened, Star-Lord Quill undressed, walked to the cabin door, and said seriously to the alien kid below, "Hey, kid, I want to ask you something." The alien child trembled in fright, stepped back a few steps, and hid behind a large garbage instrument. "Oh!" Quill touched his nose in embarrassment, and in the cockpit behind him, Gamora couldn't help but shook his head. Brown Bear Rocket walked out cheerfully, and took the opportunity to pat Quill's calf mockingly. "Even a child can handle it. No, look at me." The rocket came to the door of the cabin, coughed, and the alien child suddenly revealed one eye and peeked at it. Rocket grinned friendlily, suddenly raised the energy gun on his back, and said viciously, "Little kid, if you don't want to die, tell us everything you know." Before he finished speaking, the rocket was grabbed by a hand from behind and thrown back. "You two can't do this." That person was Gamora. She took a catwalk, jumped from the starfighter, and landed on the garbage mountain. "Don't worry, we won't hurt you." Gamora came to the side of the trembling alien child. She, who usually kills without batting an eyelid, took out a bright red apple from her pocket and handed it to the child, who was surprisingly gentle past. The alien child looked at the apple, swallowed his saliva, and after Gamora nodded, the child snatched the apple with both hands, opened his mouth and devoured it, even the skin and seeds. After eating the apple, the alien child relaxed a lot and asked, "What do you want to know?" Gamora then said, "Our fighter has some malfunctions. I heard that there is a mechanical repairer named Howard here who can repair the starfighter. Are you looking for Master Howard?" The alien child was immediately amused, and said with a smile, "That's right, his repair skills are the top ones here. He lives at the foot of the mountain not far from here, and I'll take you there." While talking, the alien kid made faces at Quill and Rocket. That brat. Rocket gritted his teeth, rolled up his sleeves, and wanted to have a big fight, but was quickly stopped by Quill, Okay, just find the position, don't be like a child, on another Eagle fighter plane. Seeing that Gamora and the alien child had reached a consensus, Kyle nodded and said, "It seems that they have found a place." Ding bang. There was a sound of metal landing in the lounge at the back, and Tony was still yelling anxiously, "Jarvis, quickly help me take off the lower part of the battlesuit. I need to change." "Okay, sir," Jarvis responded, followed by another clang of dismantled metal. Kyle and Lorna next to him looked at each other and smiled knowingly. It was indeed too long to wait for this day. Even Tony, who was a child in the past, had a mature appearance with wrinkles and a shaggy beard. "You are also looking forward to it, boss?" Lorna stretched out her hands and held Kyle's left palm, feeling the heat and slight tremor. "Yeah, it's been a long time." Howard, Logan, and Lucy, Kyle was filled with emotion. Seeing the nervous look on Lorna's pretty face, he couldn't help holding her hand, and said slowly, "Don't worry, Lucy will accept you and Yutwang." No matter how the two women, Yutwang and Lorna, have accompanied Kyle all the way. He has experienced wind, rain, frost and snow, and it is impossible for him to part with him at will if they wanted to stay. Kyle had absolutely no reason to refuse. While marching towards the top of the universe evolution chain, don't leave any regrets, otherwise, in the end, you won't live forever in a lonely posture like Thanos, Dormammu, and Ancient One. Boss, Lorna's heart trembled, and tears almost came out of her eyes. She waited for this sentence, and she also waited too long. South of Picos, there is a building made up of all kinds of civilized garbage, which is 20 meters high, and the inside and outside are full of characteristics compared with the surrounding garbage mountains. This building is already out of shape, with the logos of Stark and S.H.I.E.L.D. on the signboard. A sun lounger is placed in front of the building entrance. The white-haired old man in casual clothes is lying on it, bathing in the sunlight that has been filtered through layers of protection. His face is covered with a book of beauty impurities, and the old-fashioned radio next to him is playing Earth 19 ballroom music. Grandpa Howard. Grandpa Howard. You have business." The alien child ran over from a distance, kept waving his arms, and shouted repeatedly from a distance of tens of meters. "What kind of business?" "You're bothering me to rest," Howard bickered dissatisfiedly, removed the impurities, and when he saw two starfighters flying in the sky, he stood up quickly this time. One is a previously repaired Star Hunter fighter, and the other is a starfighter from an outer galaxy civilization, Howard judged and whispered, and walked a few steps forward. Two starfighters stopped in the open space in front of the building one after another, raising waves of lowest dust. The cockpit of the Star-Lord fighter was opened first. Quill got down from inside, and smiled at Howard. "Old man, I haven't seen you for a few years, and you seem to be in good health." "What? Little Star-Lord introduced me to business." Howard blinked. "No." Quill shook his head and gestured to the Eagle fighter. "You have some old friends who came to the Galactic Federation to find you, and I brought them here." "Old friend?" Howard glanced at Quill suspiciously, and then set his eyes on the Eagle fighter plane. Just as the cabin door opened, a silver-haired young man walked out of it. You are." The moment Howard saw the silver-haired youth, he was completely stunned. His old body trembled slightly, his mouth moved, but he didn't make any sound. The young man's face is as handsome as a knife and axe, with a silver hair shawl, and a tall body with a golden ratio. His momentum is always indifferent and extremely oppressive, just like the heroic Major General who was so energetic and invincible decades ago. Bull. The young man in front of him is almost exactly the same as the young man back then. Howard just stared at it blankly. If it wasn't for the alien kid shaking his arms, he might have thought it was all a dream and hallucination. "What's the matter? Have you even forgotten me?" Kyle came to the front, looked at the old man who was 30 or 40 years older than before, and said softly, "Long time no see, Howard. I'm here to make an appointment. This agreement is half a century late, and there are still hundreds of millions of light years away." Chapter 411 The Whereabouts of Lucy and Logan. Everything came too suddenly, not so much a surprise, maybe a little more shocking. The outer space universe of the Marvel human world is too vast and boundless. The distance between the Earth and the Galactic Federation is more than hundreds of millions of light years. Finding someone is undoubtedly more difficult than finding a needle in a haystack. Howard and his party set off from the Earth and wandered in space for many years. They have repeatedly questioned whether Kyle can be found for countless days and nights. In the end, there was no hope of even returning home to Earth. When all hopes were gradually shattered and Howard resigned himself to his fate, he lived in the deserted Pecos and his body was getting old, but Kyle appeared in front of him without any warning. Howard couldn't help but step forward, looked directly at Kyle, and asked in a trembling tone, "Patriarch, is it really you? I can't be in a dream, right, old gentleman? It is not easy to find you." Kyle smiled in relief, and Howard also smiled happily. The corners of his eyes were slightly moist. He stretched out his withered left hand and put it on Kyle's strong shoulder. "This sentence should be said by us. We want to find you. It's really not easy." Quill, Bibo and the others watched silently. From Kyle and Howard, they only expressed emotion in a few words, which contained difficulties and hardships that ordinary people could not understand. Kyle was seriously ill and left the Earth, but he escaped death in the starry sky before regaining his lifespan and a brand new future as a mere mortal. Howard obviously experienced countless hardships before finally finding a place to stay in the extremely vicious Galactic Federation. "You look a lot older." Kyle looked at Howard's hair, which was covered with frost and white, which was because his vitality was about to be exhausted. "You know, Howard has an infinite formula to slow down aging, and it makes no sense to be reduced to this point." "It's hard to say." Howard sighed, looked Kyle up and down, and said happily for him, "You look the same as before, young, strong, and full of vitality. The nuclear radiation mutation in your body should be completely cured, right?" "Yes, I have become a god." Kyle blinked calmly, and when Howard was in a daze, he patted his shoulder and gestured behind him. "It's not just me. There is another person who left the Earth for you." "Huh?" Howard looked in the indicated direction, and saw that not far behind Kyle, Tony was standing under the door of the Eagle fighter plane, as if he didn't have the courage to step closer. At this time, Tony had disarmed his battlesuit, was wearing a suit and tie, and his hair was combed straight, looking like a mature gentleman. Howard's eyes showed a complicated expression, and he said, "Is it Tony?" Tony took a deep breath, stepped forward, and coughed to hide his emotions. "Who else would look for you? A bad old man, except me. You dress so formally. It's really not like your style before." Howard stared at Tony, and suddenly smiled. "You too, Dad." Tony and Howard looked at each other without saying anything, but smiled nervously. Seeing this scene, Rocket jumped onto Quill's shoulder, and whispered into his ear, "You said, people who engage in technology, are their emotions so rational and restrained? Shall I shoot a few shots into the sky to celebrate?" Quill was inexplicably sad, covered Rocket's mouth with his hand, and said humbly, "Father and son are reunited, so please calm down for me, after Howard and Tony are reunited." Kyle looked at the building in front of him, but didn't sense the aura of other people. He couldn't help but wondered at Howard. "Howard, where's Lucy and Logan? Did the three of you leave Earth together?" When Howard heard this, his face instantly turned pale. He passed Tony, put his hands on Kyle's shoulders, and lowered his head in shame. "I'm sorry, Kyle, I'm very sorry. Did something happen to them?" "Huh?" Facing Howard's reaction, Kyle's face remained calm, but his hands were tightly clenched, and the fusion energy overflowed slightly unstable. It's like being in a quiet state of an active volcano, and there is a possibility of a monstrous magma erupting at any time. Despite the risk of being burned by the fusion energy, Howard still did not let go of Kyle's shoulders, as if he wanted to get forgiveness. "Godfather," Tony whispered uneasily. When Quill and the others saw this, they didn't dare to intervene at will. They could only keep watching in amazement. The alien child showed shock on his face, and retreated subconsciously until he retreated to where Gamora was. After taking a long breath, he secretly looked at Kyle and said, "That person is so scary. I almost couldn't breathe just now," until Lorna came to Kyle's side. She stroked her back with her palm, and called softly, "Boss, calm down." Kyle was in a trance for a while, then nodded, and sighed lightly at Howard. "Sorry, I lost my temper. It's me who should apologize. It's my powerlessness. I failed to protect Lucy and Logan." Howard's body trembled constantly, as if recalling bad memories, with fear, timidity, anger, sadness, and helplessness in his eyes. "Are they dead? Who did it?" Kyle narrowed his eyes, with the cold killing intent brewing on his body. "I don't know. Maybe he's dead, or maybe he's still alive." Howard looked up at everyone, waved his hand towards the building, and said hoarsely, "Everyone go in. I'll tell you everything." Kyle didn't speak, nor did he make any movements. Rocket blinked at Quill, jumped on the tree man, smoothed things over and said, "My Groot is thirsty. He wants to go into the house to drink water." "No, They are all acquaintances. Let's all go in and sit down and chat slowly. Quill received the hint, and hurriedly agreed to smooth things over. Under the easing atmosphere of Rocket and Quill, Kyle and his party followed Howard, entered the residential building, and sat down in the huge living room on the second floor. Back then, me, Luzi, and Logan, since you haven't returned to Earth for a long time, started thinking about going out to space to find you. Howard did not procrastinate, and directly stated all the things that happened when the three formed an interstellar cluster and went out to Earth. Kyle listened carefully. Howard continued, on the way of wandering in space, we also encountered many difficulties, but because of Logan as a strong bodyguard, coupled with some advanced technological weapons of mine, we still survived the difficulties without any danger. Kyle nodded secretly. After the adamantium metal was implanted in Logan's body, his combat power was top-notch. 5 years after we left the Earth, we arrived in the Galactic Federation and were amazed by the civilization here. It was a difficult but beautiful time. We want to settle here temporarily and use the rich information network of the Galactic Federation to find your whereabouts. When Howard said this, there was a little more smile on his face, but the smile quickly dissipated. We have become interstellar hunters, accepting missions from some civilization forces, and inquiring about you by the way while earning money. But that was the beginning of all the bad luck. Kyle's fist was clenched quietly, and Lorna, who was beside her, put her hands on his fist in a soothing manner. 5 years ago, we received an intermediary mission, asking us to go to a planet and build a set of Earth-style palace buildings. Howard's face was extremely ugly. He looked at Kyle and gritted his teeth. Where did we meet? A man. He is the master of that planet. His name is Egg. He is from the celestial race. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412. The Celestials. In the lobby on the second floor, which was full of people, everyone was taken aback when they heard Howard's words. Celestials. Obviously everyone knows a little bit, but it is just because they have heard about it that it is even more unbelievable. After all, the celestial race is an ancient race that only exists in legends. It is rumored that many civilizations have not yet risen, and various alien races are still in the stage of enlightenment. The celestial race has already existed in the early cosmic age very long ago. Each of them has a power as strong as a star, and strong vitality for millions of years. But tens of thousands of years ago, the celestial race disappeared, and few people saw them again. Some people even judge that the Celestials have long been extinct in the universe. No one noticed that after Howard said the name Ego, Star-Lord Quill fell silent, wondering what he was thinking. Mr. Howard, are you sure you met the Celestials? That is a legendary ancient organism, Green Peak asked in amazement. It will never be wrong, Howard nodded, and said firmly, this is what you just said personally. Later, I did some research and completely confirmed his identity. He is the only remaining celestial clan in the universe, Howard. What happened later? Kyle narrowed his eyes. He knew more about the Celestials than the people present. Howard said slowly, after the three of us took over the intermediary mission, we drove the spaceship, left the central area of the Galactic Federation, and arrived at a life planet covered with green plants and rich in resources. Ego, as the owner of the planet, warmly received us and returned tell us a love story. Love story, Rocket blinked. That's right, a love story. A story about a celestial man and a human woman in love. When Howard said this, Quill suddenly trembled slightly, and put his head in his hands, causing Gamora, who was sitting next to him, to cast a puzzled look. Lorna covered her mouth with her hand, and asked in surprise, could it be that that celestial man named Yeja has been to Earth? Yes, Howard nodded accurately, and said, in the 19th century, Egg not only went to Earth, but also lived there for a short period of time as a human being. He and a woman named Meredith, they fell in love with each other, and gave birth to a baby boy after the crystallization of love. This is impossible. Quill raised his head suddenly, his eyes were bloodshot, staring at Howard, repeating, this is impossible. How could? Everyone else looked at Quill in surprise. Somewhere, it touched Quill and made him show such a big reaction. Sit well, Quill. Kyle raised his eyes and pressed down his left hand. Quill, who originally wanted to rush towards Howard, was pulled back to his original position by an invisible traction. Tony stood next to Howard warily, fearing that the stimulated Quill would hurt his father. Howard looked calmly, looked at Quill and said, "Son, this is the truth." Quill gritted his teeth and didn't speak. "Kiel, why do you have such a big reaction? You are not the bastard that the gods and humans mated, right? Then there should be an extra pair of wings." "Wait, do the Celestials have wings?" Rocket and Dex were joking, and laughed, but only halfway through the laugh, they found that everyone else was silent, and stopped laughing abruptly. In the lobby on the second floor, the atmosphere was strangely awkward for a while. "That can't be true." Rocket looked at the ugly Quill, and opened his mouth exaggeratedly. "Yes," Howard stated calmly, "the human baby boy who inherited the blood of the celestial race, his name is Peter Quill, which is the Star-Lord in front of you." When the truth was announced, everyone else showed shock, while Quill clenched his fists, shook his head fiercely and said, "My father is a human from Earth, and he disappeared when I was a child, so it can't be that god race." "Then have you ever wondered why you were brought to the Galactic Federation by Star Hunters? Also, is your body different from other ordinary humans?" Howard casually pointed out 2 points, and said lightly, "In fact, last time when repairing your interstellar spaceship, I have taken your blood for research, and confirmed that you and Yuji are father and son. Believe it or not, you can contact the Star Hunter who brought you to the Galactic Federation back then, and get verification from him." After Howard finished speaking, Quill had already believed it in his heart, but he was unwilling to admit this fact, and said coldly, "I will verify it." Kyle had a calm expression that he had known for a long time, and said coldly, "Howard, you continue to talk. What did the Protus Ego do to you that day?" Howard sneered and said, "Ego said that he was in a hurry and had to leave the Earth. When he returned, Meredith had passed away due to a tumor. To commemorate his wife, Ego wanted the 3 of us to build a new world on his planet. An Earth-style building, so, then Yuji still has a bit of humanity," Bibo commented, and the others nodded in secret approval. "The Celestials, who have superpowers and millions of lifespans, mourn a woman on Earth, which is no less than the unrequited love between man and God in the movie story." Human touch," Howard sneered. His face was much ugly, and he said angrily, "We thought so at first. So we agreed to Yuji's request and temporarily lived on that planet, preparing to design and carry out construction. Because of that, we accidentally discovered Egg's secret." "What secret?" Kyle asked everyone on the field. Howard took a deep breath and said, "The seemingly resource-rich life planet, under the ground full of flowers and green plants, is full of bone remains of creatures of various races. It turns out that Yuji is a celestial race, and the planet is himself the main body needs a lot of resources and nutrients to support, so we constantly induce creatures to come to our door, and use their bodies and alien ship materials as fertilizer for breeding planets." "What?" the people on the field gasped when they heard this. "By the time we knew it, it was already too late," Howard said bitterly. "Ego can perceive what happened on the entire planet. When we wanted to fly the spaceship to escape, we found that the spaceship had been damaged. We had no choice but to cooperate with Ego. Go started a fight. Of course we are no match for the Celestials. In the end, Logan and Lucy gave me a chance to escape, and I was able to escape in a dilapidated spaceship. I lost Logan and Lucy, as well as the original spaceship, and without the manufacturing materials of the infinite formula, I quickly entered the aging period. In the past 5 years, I have devoted myself to research every day and night. I want to find a way to kill the Celestials. Otherwise, I will have no face to explain to you, Patriarch. This is everything you want to know." After Howard finished speaking, he stared at Kyle with a sad face, waiting for his response. "Understood." Kyle stood up from his seat, as if he was going on a trip, and said in a calm voice, "Now, I'm going to kill the Protus that day." Chapter 413 About God. How? Looking at the shocked expressions on everyone's faces, Kyle's pair of broken gold pupils showed no emotion, and said sternly, "Ego has done something to my people, and I'm going to take revenge now. Isn't that strange?" Everyone was speechless. Indeed, this logic couldn't be more normal and reasonable. It's just, the other party is not a cat or a dog. He can kill if he says he can, but he is the legendary celestial race. "I'll go back to the fighter plane first." Eyelids twitched violently. Star-Lord Quill couldn't sit still in the hall. Although Quill still doesn't fully believe that his father is Ego, the Protus of the day, and has done so many bad things, but at this time Kyle is obviously going to do something to Ego, and then drag it on. "I'm afraid Egg will no longer exist." Quill thought of this, got up without saying a word, walked out of the hall, and rushed to the starfighter downstairs. He wanted to get in touch with Yondu, the interstellar hunter who brought him to the Galactic Federation when he was young, and ask Yondu about the inside story and the truth. Others did not stop Quill's departure, as if they didn't see it, and their thinking was still stuck in the revenge action that Kyle said. Patriarch, I know you really want to avenge Logan and Lucy, why not me? Howard was the first to break the silence, looking at Kyle solemnly, fearing that he would go to die on impulse, and said in a deep voice, but that man is a celestial, who is located at the apex of the pyramid of galactic combat power, and has a star-like power. Life? Far from being as easy to deal with as before, Hydra's soldiers on Earth. Kyle was unmoved, and stood indifferently in the center of the hall, as if he had not listened to Howard's persuasion. His body was filled with cold killing intent and oppressive force. Tony, I advise you, Godfather, never act rashly. Howard patted Tony's hand beside him, and Tony immediately showed an innocent expression. Howard took a deep breath and continued to persuade Kyle, Patriarch, you must know. In this huge galactic alliance, such as the fighting races of the Carey Empire, ordinary people alone have fighting power no less than super soldiers. Not to mention the Celestials are superior to the Kree in every aspect. The Kree are strong. Kyle didn't speak, but the expressions on other people's faces became extremely wonderful. Howard looked around them in surprise, and said in surprise, what's the matter, did I say something wrong? He turned his questioning eyes to his son. The corners of Tony's mouth rose confidently, and he smiled and said, Father, you don't know. The Godfather is very strong now. He is so strong. It is definitely not comparable to the so-called Kree people. Howard heard this, and looked at Kyle again in surprise indeed. The Patriarch's aura is not the same as before, and the previous Patriarch once said that he became a god? Become a god, what is this concept? Mr. Howard, as a slave, Lu Fang smiled slightly, knowing that this was a great opportunity to lick the dog, and couldn't help but compliment him. You don't know. Not long ago, Master Kyle fought against the Kree Empire's star fleet alone, and finally broke into the Kree Empire alone. The Supreme Hall of Reichsing killed Ronan, the ruler of the Carey Empire, killed Ronan. Howard was startled. Bibo also nodded, and said with emotion, it's not just that. Mr. Kyle once kicked and smashed the protective net of the battleship of the Nova Corps because he rescued me. But now, the Nova Empire regards Mr. Kyle as the most senior VIP, and needs to the leader of the new star personally received it, break the protective net of the new star with one kick? Return the reception by the leader of the new star? Howard was a little confused by the exaggerated record. He looked at Lorna, who is a normal human woman, as if to prove it. Lorna's face was full of smiles, as if she was the object of everyone's admiration and awe. She looked at Kyle softly, and said softly, yes, Uncle Howard. The boss, he also took the artifact of the Kree Empire as a trophy return. Is this true, Patriarch? Howard began to tremble all over, staring at Kyle expectantly, wanting to hear his own confession. Kyle said indifferently, Howard, you don't think that after so long, I'm still stalled on the road of evolution, do you? This is really great. Howard stood up abruptly, holding Kyle's hand tightly with his dry hands, changed his previous cautious compromise, and gritted his teeth hoarsely. Patriarch, you must take care of Lucy. Revenge with Logan and the others. You don't need to say, I will make him pay back 100 times. Kyle squinted his eyes, put his hand on Howard's shoulder, as if he had noticed something, and said inexplicably, actually, I don't think Lucy and Logan are dead. What does it mean? Not only others, but even Howard, who as the person involved, looked at Kyle with doubts. To tell you the truth, my body has been fused with a space gem for a while. After absorbing the overflowing energy of the space gem, it merges with the original firepower to form a new strange energy. Kyle snapped his fingers lightly, and a dazzling arc of light jumped out of his fingertips, flickering with frightening power. How is this possible? Even Thanos has to indirectly control the power of gems by forging artifacts. Gamora looked at Kyle in disbelief, as if seeing the monster's horrified expression. This is the fact. Through this kind of fusion energy, I can supercharge my body and become a double star. I can fly faster than the speed of light in the outer space and the universe. I even have a sense of ignoring distance that jumps out of the original dimension. Kyle closed his eyes, a white light flashed in his eyes. He stared at Howard and said, Howard, I touched you just now. It seems that through you as a medium, I sensed the faint existence of Lucy and Logan. Howard couldn't help being excited. So, Maybe Lucy and Logan are still alive, or imprisoned by Ig somewhere on the planet. It's very possible. But about these, I have to ask you in detail. Kyle touched his chin, thought for a while, and said in a deep voice, Howard, you have been hiding here for the past few years and conducted in-depth research on the Celestials. Have you found anything? For example, weaknesses and killing methods? Have. Howard nodded bluntly, and said coldly, I have had contact with Jack, and in addition to collecting information in the starry sky in the past few years, I have also obtained Quill's blood, and I have made a major discovery. Let's talk about it. Kyle nodded, and got the energy of the space gem. He was not conceded to be invincible in the starry sky, and the enemy he faced was the only remaining celestial race in the universe. Howard sat back on his seat and said solemnly, the first batch of celestials did not rely on reproduction, but the transformation of life planets into self-awareness. Although they have a nearly infinite lifespan, they also need a lot of resources to maintain. Otherwise, it will go to the end of extinction. This is why the Celestials, after the rise of many civilization forces, have died one after another and are on the verge of extinction. The Celestials, that is, the planet of life. Kyle nodded, which was similar to his impression. Howard continued, Ego not only snatches the vitality of other creatures and planets, expands his own territory, but also creates avatars that can leave the planet and mate with females of other races, in order to give birth to a brand new individual of the celestial race. The existence of Jukwil is proof. The Rocket shivered all over, and complained, I want to ask, how does it feel to be given a planet day? I went to watch the Avengers, premiere. There will be big news on May, so stay tuned. CAC. Chapter 414 Devouring the Starry Sky, Star Shuttle Skateboard. By Planet A? Everyone in the lobby on the second floor couldn't help but sweat profusely when they heard the words. It is estimated that only Rocket, who is jumping in his thinking and not serious, would think of this insignificant point at this moment. If Quill was here, I'd probably blow your fluffy head off, little brown bear. Dex, who was naked from the upper body, was deeply disgusted, and shivered with his hands folded over his chest. By the way, where is Star-Lord Quill? Howard noticed that Quill had left the lobby area on the second floor without knowing when. If he was here, why would I complain at will? Rocket grinned and said, just now Mr. Kyle said he was going to kill Egg, and that guy left the hall. He probably returned to the Star Wars to find the Star Wars that brought him up. Hunter Yondu is going to verify it. It seems that he still refuses to admit it, but his body is very honest. Before the words were finished here, the building where everyone was in suddenly trembled, and then the Star-Lord starfighter parked outside, accompanied by a strong dust wave. The engine ignited and started. The orange-blue starfighter floated in the air, accelerating towards the starry sky beyond. He actually left us and left alone. Rocket's face froze. Gamora shook her head, her dark red hair swaying like a rattle. She, who had always disliked Quill, actually spoke for him at this moment. The interstellar signal on this planet is not very good. He may have arrived nearby. The planet went to make video contact. That's about the same. Rocket snorted. Howard's face became serious, and he said, wait, Star-Lord shouldn't be allowed to leave now. If Egg finds him, it will be a big disaster. That celestial race Ego, who tried every means to find alien women and cultivate offspring, is he trying to revive the former prosperity of the celestial race? Dex the Destroyer was a little surprised. Now their Destroyer clan has also been massacred by Ronan, and they also belong to the race that is on the verge of starry sky. No. That man, who only pays attention to his great achievements in opening up territories, how could he allow the collective interests of the race to override himself? Howard shook his head and said, the Celestials can control the power in their bodies, plant their own seeds on other planets, and the seeds will lie dormant like tumor cells, waiting to one day achieve their goal of annexing the starry sky. Lorna reacted quickly, and said in surprise, so, there are also seeds he planted on the Earth. Howard nodded. More than that, Ego may have planted his own seeds on thousands of life planets. But in the past 10 years, he suddenly stopped these actions and began to focus on finding Quill's trace. It's absolutely impossible for a guy like that to be delayed because of the relationship between father and son. I'm afraid Star-Lord Quill has what he needs to awaken the seeds to germinate, Kyle said coldly. That's right, I think so too. Howard nodded and said, I guess, Ego can't annex planets with only his own power of the gods, so he bred Quill and wanted to borrow the power of the gods from him. Power to achieve your ultimate goal. Just kill Egg before he absorbs Quill's godly power, and that's it. Right. Kyle looked at Howard seriously, obviously impatient. Howard nodded in approval directly, and said slowly, "Fortunately, now Quill obviously has not awakened the power of the gods. And obviously Ego has not found him. This may be the Star Hunter named Yondu, hiding and protecting Quill in secret bar. That's easy. We knocked Quill out and trapped him in the basement of this building." "That's fine." Rocket laughed, took out an instrument from his trouser pocket, and quickly operated it. "Out of professional habits, I put a tracker on Quill's starfighter earlier. Now let me see where he went." After finishing the rocket operation, looking at the cursor display on the screen, he said with a smile, "Kiel is driving the fighter, and he really went to the next planet. Don't worry." "Wait," the fighter suddenly moved. "Take it here and show me." Howard stretched forward, and Rocket decisively handed over the tracker. After Howard received the tracker, he took out the black-rimmed glasses from his jacket pocket and put them on before looking at the instrument screen. "He is leaving in the opposite direction of our planet." Howard was surprised. The cursor on the screen flickered, and then disappeared without a trace. "A galaxy far, far away. Now, he's really abandoned you." Dex chuckled, looking at Rocket and Gamora with ugly faces. "Give me the tracker, and I'll chase him back." Kyle suddenly had an ominous premonition, stood up from his seat without hesitation, took the tracker from Howard, thought for a while, turned to Gamora again and said, "When the matter of the Celestials is resolved, I will talk to you again. You go get the soul gem." Gamora nodded and replied, "No problem." Seeing that Kyle was about to leave, Howard said anxiously, "Patriarch, you only know the general direction in which he is driving the fighter plane. How can you use the starfighter plane to chase him?" "Who said I'm going to chase after him with a fighter plane?" The corner of Kyle's mouth raised, holding the tracker. His body's surface began to flow with glare energy, and suddenly started in the hall. His body turned into a dazzling streamer. He smashed through the glass of the balcony on the second floor, and chased towards the outer space with a rapidly increasing flying speed. "This is too unscientific." Howard was stunned, watching Kyle's back disappear, and whispered, "Father, just get used to it." Tony stroked his mustache. Kyle broke through the atmosphere at the speed of light and entered the vast outer space. With full firepower, he was promoted to fly faster than the speed of light, and chased in the direction where the signal disappeared. Countless dim or bright stars blurred to both sides. "Xingju, what exactly do you want to do?" Kyle squinted his eyes, looked at the tracker, and passed the space area at a high speed like a bright beam of sunlight 5 minutes ago. The neighboring star not far from Pico's, Dada. Quill landed the starfighter next to a secluded forest lake, saw the interstellar signal return to green light, took a few deep breaths to calm down, and began to dial the interstellar contact in the driving seat. A few seconds later, on the holographic projection of the video communication, a blue-skinned bald head with a middle-aged alien inlaid with metal on his forehead was revealed. With a straight face, he scolded Quill, "Bastard, finally willing to take the initiative to contact me? Where did you go now? Are you still alive?" Of course he's still alive. Although Quill was scolded, he felt warm in his heart, knowing that Yondu was a knife-mouthed tofu. "You still don't want to come back to me while you're alive? Do you still want to show it to someone else? By the way, you should still keep that cosmic spirit ball on your body, and bring it back to me. I heard it's very valuable." Yondu hummed endlessly. "Yondu," Quill suddenly called out, and asked bluntly, "Did my father ask you to bring me as a child to the galaxy?" Yondu's face changed slightly, and he said, "Why do you ask that?" "My father," Quill's voice trembled slightly, "is his name Ig? It seems that you already know." Yondu took a breath, stared at Quill, and simply admitted, "Yes, but there is a reason for all of this." Only halfway through Yondu's words, the video suddenly freezes, and the connection is forcibly interrupted, as if the signal has been strongly disturbed. "Yondu, Yondu!" Quill slapped the equipment and instruments, and when he was wondering, in front of the windshield of the fighter plane, the waves of the lake began to churn out from the center. A tiny silver star shuttle slowly parked on the lake. On the top of the star shuttle, a cheeky middle-aged man stood on it. Shirin, and actually used the star shuttle that travels through the universe as a skateboard. "Love you 3,000 times, long live Hydra, lightning flows in my blood, Avengers, is over." This movie is an unprecedented feast for Marvel fans, and it must not be missed. Maybe I will watch it again and again to find the touching moments of the Premier League. Also, let me tell you something from the bottom of my heart. The plot of this book has already entered the later stage. and there may be 3 or 4 million words before it will end in the later stage of writing. I must admit that the plot is not as exciting as the early stage. This may be the biggest reason why I want to explode, but I have no motivation. Avengers IV made me ignite the urge to start writing card draws. After discussing with the editor in charge, it was decided to release a double release in May, with the premise of Avengers IV as the official serialization of the second Marvel doujin. At the same time as opening a new book, the card draw is also constantly updated, and will continue to be updated daily until the end. Chapter 415 Again Number 039, S Planet. The middle-aged man stood on the Silver Star shuttle that looked like a skateboard. His hair and beard had been slightly bleached by the years. Obviously he had reached a certain age and was entering the old age of life. The door of Star-Lord's starfighter opened, and Quill, who was fully armed and wearing an oxygen supply protective helmet, jumped out of the cockpit of the fighter with 2 guns in hand, watching the middle-aged man who parked the Star Shuttle on the lake with vigilance. He asked coldly, "Who are you, Kiel? After all these years, I finally found you." The middle-aged man sighed unceasingly, turned around. His eyes were as bright as a starry sky, and he stared at Quill affectionately in his eyes. The 2 eyes met. Quill's heart seemed to be hit. The hand holding the gun trembled violently, and said in disbelief, "You are?" The middle-aged man nodded gently and said with a smile, "Yes. I am your father." "Egg, how come?" Quill murmured, and subconsciously put down the pistol. Seeing this, Egg showed a kind smile on his face. "I made you suffer, my child." After Quill was stunned, his eyes sharpened, and he growled like a wounded beast. "Where have you been all these years? Do you know that when my mother was critically ill and held my hand, she still called your name? I was also forced to leave." Egg sighed. Quill took a deep breath, calmed down, looked at Egg, and said in a deep voice, "I have a lot of questions I want to ask you, about my mother, and about me." "No problem, but this is not a good place for family reunion." Yigo looked around the forest wilderness, pointed to the Star Shuttle under him, and suggested, "I will take you to my territory planet, where you want to. If you know anything, I can give you a full answer." Quill had too many unanswered questions about his father's mysterious disappearance, his mother's sudden illness, and his being taken away from the Earth by aliens when he was a child reason for rejection. Quill looked at the Star Shuttle, then at the Starfighter, and said hesitantly, "It's fine, but I still have some friends on nearby planets." Yi just smiled and said, "It's okay, you come with me, and after a day, you can come back and arrange your friends, or when the time comes, you can invite them to go to our planet territory together." "All right then." Quill hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded in agreement. Soon, Ego's Star Shuttle was in front, taking the starfighter piloted by Quill, one after the other, jumping through the starry sky, heading for galaxies outside the Galactic Federation. At this time, Kyle was still flying in outer space. Since he didn't know the exact location, and the tracker was only effective in the same galaxy, he could only follow the direction in which the signal disappeared. Flying faster than the speed of light has far surpassed the top-tech interstellar fighters and spaceships. Sometimes even the fighters have to fly for several months. Now Kyle can complete it in only 10 minutes. I don't know how many galaxies have been crossed, and finally, as the green light of the tracker flashes, a cursor in the shape of a fighter plane reappears on the screen. Kyle looked at the screen while flying, and said to himself, "The fighter plane has stopped. Has it arrived at a planet, and the location is not far ahead?" Following the navigation prompts of the cursor, Kyle's speed began to slow down step by step. And soon he stopped in the space outside the destination planet, with scorching bright light still flowing from his body. When he could see the scene of the planet in front of him, Kyle sucked in a breath of cold air with his scalp still numb. I saw that lying ahead was a planet no less than the size of the Earth, which was green and blue intersected with vigorous life breath, but its overall shape was like the head of a very middle-aged man, and the mountains and rivers also changed their eyebrows, mouth, nose, etc. Contours come to life. This is God. Is it a step too late? It's such a coincidence that guy just found Quill. Kyle narrowed his eyes, thought for a moment, and activated a stealth skill that had been useless for a long time. The dark mist shrouded his body overflowing with light, and then landed at the head planet at a normal fighter speed. Passing through the atmosphere, Kyle's flight speed was reduced by another level, just like a huge eagle, soaring in the sky and looking down. The planet's green mountains, green waters, and flowers are in full bloom, and it is full of beautiful scenes full of vitality at a glance. But once he thought that the remains of countless creatures were buried under this beautiful scene, probably including the corpses of Lucy and Logan, Kyle's eyes were as cold as ice. I hope Lucy and Logan are still alive, otherwise, no matter what celestials, not to mention the entire planet of life, even this galaxy will be burned by Kyle's anger. According to the tracker prompts, Kyle found the starfighter where Star-Lord stayed in front of a palace garden on the planet. Kyle kept sneaking towards the side of the palace, his ears moved suddenly, and with super sensitive hearing, he heard the conversation between Quill and Ego, as well as the voice of a maid. Master Egg, Master Quill, tea is here, okay, go down, don't disturb our father-son reunion without my order. Yes. After the conversation, with a sound of light steps, a snail woman wearing a maid skirt and 2 tentacles on her head came out. She held a shower and scissors in her hand and went to the garden outside the palace to start tending the flowers and plants. Kyle, who was hiding in the corner of the palace, watched the snail maid, whose tall figure disappeared into the shadows again. The snail maid was humming and watering the flowers. Suddenly, there was a commotion among the flowers, and an orange kitten poked its head out lazily. Oh, my God! Little guy, where are you from? I've never seen you before. The snail maid was surprised at first, then put her finger on her lips, and glanced at the palace building behind her, whispered worriedly, "Don't make a sound, the master heard it, and you are in danger." The little orange cat opened her eyes wide, and tilted her head in doubt. The heart of the snail maid was melted. She put down the shower, squatted down and stretched out her hand to the orange cat. "Good boy." Before the snail maid's hand touched the hair, the little orange cat suddenly opened its mouth exaggeratedly, swallowed the snail maid in one gulp, and then ran out of the garden without looking back. A few kilometers away from the garden palace. When the little orange cat vomited the snail maid on the grass, and the snail maid coughed continuously and opened her eyes, Kyle stood right in front of her and looked down at her. The snail maid hugged her chest in shock and shrank into a ball. "Who are you?" "An outsider." "You are the maid Howard said, right?" "5 years ago, you helped him escape from this planet," Kyle said calmly. If it wasn't for this reason, he would have used venom to forcibly extract the maid's memory. Hearing Howard's name, the snail maid immediately breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "Are you an acquaintance of him?" "It's not important. Now, you answer my question first." Kyle clenched his fists and said, "Are Lucy and Logan still alive?" Chapter 416 Goodbye Lucy. Planet Ego, the other side of the garden palace. Compared with the plains where flowers and plants are blooming all over the mountains, here is another scene. The ground is bare and no grass grows, and the dark brown surface is covered with dry cracks. There are only scattered dead trees, and the withered branches without leaves are like the old man stretched his hand to the sky. At the end of the wasteland, there is a large active volcano, like a giant beast straddling the earth. The heat in the air can be felt a few kilometers away, and the sky above the crater is even more cloudy. No life will set foot in this dead land, only today is a special exception. Is it here? Kyle looked at the active volcano in front of him, and then glanced at the snail maid who stood behind her and twisted her fingers. "Yes, I don't know if Miss Lucy and Mr. Logan are still alive. But 5 years ago, after the master fought with Lucy and Logan, an active volcano suddenly formed here." Snail maid stepping on the edge of the green grassland, looking at the dark brown dry land with apprehension, he said in a low voice with a pale face, "After the master returns to the palace, it is strictly forbidden or order that any creature is not allowed to approach this area. If he finds out, it will be used as nutrient fertilizer and fed to this planet. Everything happens for a reason, so there must be something strange." Kyle narrowed his eyes, and after thinking for a while, he pulled out a creature card and summoned it directly as a real thing. A group of misty creatures emerged from the air, circled around Kyle, and whispered respectfully, "Pride obeys your orders, Master. Arrogance, keep an eye on her until I come back." Kyle pointed to the snail maid. "Yes, Master." Arrogance responded coldly, wrapping around the body of the snail maid. The snail maid kept waving her hands in panic, but she couldn't touch the spirit body of Arrogance, let alone drive away the arrogance. "Don't worry, as long as you have no intention of running away, it won't hurt you, but will protect you." After Kyle finished explaining, he stepped forward lightly, and as his body started to fuse energy, the whole person suddenly floated in the air and flew towards the crater at an accelerated speed. The active volcano is 300 meters above sea level, and the diameter of the crater is nearly, meters. When it is close to the edge of the crater, the temperature in the air is so hot that ordinary creatures cannot even approach it. But no matter how high the temperature is, it doesn't make much difference to Kyle. His divine power itself is the fire element, coupled with the energy sucked from the space gem. He can freely pass through the extremely harsh environment of outer space. Kyle landed on the edge of the crater, looking down at the mountainside tens of meters deep. There was hot red molten lava with bubbles and thick smoke inside. Some stones were kicked down by his shoes, and they were immediately blown away by the molten lava melted into a puff of smoke. There are no signs of life detected within the range of the volcano. Weiss turned on the sound wave scanning and said, "Master, could it be that this active volcano was caused by Lucy and Logan fighting against Ego?" Kyle shook his head lightly, and judged, "Let's not talk about it. Lucy and Logan have the strength. Just relying on Ego as the main body of the planet, they can repair the terrain at will. This active volcano is obviously created by himself. Then why did he do this?" Weiss was a little surprised in a humane way. "In order to cover up the things that exist here, just go down and take a look." Kyle's eyes were piercing. Without the slightest hesitation, he turned on the dazzling fusion energy again, as if a protective shield had been propped up on his body, and he jumped into the lava of the crater. PFFT. The high-temperature lava splashed, and Kyle, who had his own light source, seemed to be diving deep in the water, sinking continuously into the hotter hinterland of the volcano. After landing about 1,000 meters, that is to say, reaching the bottom of the crater, Kyle felt the lava flowing around. The temperature began to drop slowly, and finally became as cold as clear water, and the distance he could see was also continuously extending. Kyle suddenly opened his eyes wide. Under the lava-filled ground of the volcano, he saw another small mountain floating in it. The mountain was not made of rock, but almost translucent blue ice. Under the active volcano, there is an iceberg hidden. Grassland outside the volcano. The snail maid was sitting on the grass. Her whole body was too stiff to move, and her arrogance was entangled on her neck. After Kyle left, neither of them had any communication. The maid of the snail star turned her head cautiously, looked at the pride again, and asked weakly about a long black mist-like spirit body. "Can you say something? You are a snail-like lowly creature. You are not worthy to talk to me." Arrogance sneered and hummed. "I'm not a snail." The maid of the snail was at a loss for words for a moment. The spirit creature guarding her was really, as its name suggests, arrogant and arrogant. "Only the master is qualified to talk to me," arrogantly said coldly. "Aren't you just talking to me now?" The snail maid was deeply speechless, and wanted to say something else. The earth shook suddenly and violently, and the dark clouds in the sky were shattered, as if the entire planet of life began to tremble at this moment. The change came quickly and stopped quickly, and everything returned to its original state in just 3 seconds. Arrogantly said to himself, "Just now, I can clearly feel that powerful energy is coming from the other side of the planet. It's the master," the snail maid said with a pale face. "His plan has succeeded, and the second god is finally about to awaken." The second god. Just when arrogance was wondering, the ground trembled again, but this time the source of the earthquake came from the crater. "I saw red lava gushing out from the crater, and then an iceberg rose and floated into the sky, until it completely separated from the mountainside, and a little starlight appeared from the bottom of the iceberg." That was Kyle, who was fully operating the fusion energy. He carried a small iceberg weighing thousands of tons, flew out of the crater, and flew to the grassland where the maid of the snail was. Boom! Kyle slowed down and landed slowly, and when he dropped the iceberg on his shoulders onto the grass, the ground trembled, and then centered on the iceberg. The biting cold air overflowed, covering the area with a radius of hundreds of meters with a thin layer. Thin frosting. "It's so cold," the snail star maid shivered, and stepped back a few steps from the nearby iceberg. When her eyes fell on the light blue mountain, she suddenly froze. But there was a woman in the belly of the iceberg figure. Kyle rested his palm on the iceberg, feeling the coldness in it, but his heart was hot and joyful, and he raised his eyes and stared blankly at the familiar figure that was frozen in the belly of the iceberg. Waist-length blonde hair, fair skin like snow, exquisite and flawless facial features, and a vague smile on his face, wearing white clothes, he is like an angel. Just like half a century ago. Kyle's thoughts drifted away, his palm rubbed against the ice body, and said with emotion, "Finally found you, Lucy." Chapter 417 Reunion after half a century. When Kyle put his hand on the ice, Weiss's deformed smartwatch also emitted a beam of blue X laser to conduct a preliminary scan and analysis of the iceberg, which is nearly the size of a 5-story building. Weiss quickly responded with relevant information. Master, the texture of this iceberg is not ordinary ice, but rather solid ice that has been frozen for thousands of years. It gradually melts over time, but this iceberg is directly immune to the high-temperature corrosion of the magma. This is too strange. Can you detect Lucy's signs of life? Kyle said. This is what he cares most about. This, Wacy said with a little embarrassment. The ice layer is too thick, and the layers block the laser scanning, making it impossible to detect the living organisms in the mountain. At this moment, as the snail maid exclaimed, a cloud of black mist surged forward, respecting Kyle. Master, maybe I can try it. Kyle nodded. Arrogant immediately soared into the air, and slammed into the outer layer of the iceberg with a diameter, but the spirit body directly penetrated the ice body, and swam to the side of Lucy in the belly of the iceberg, wandering up and down, left, and right. After a few laps, the arrogance returned to Kyle again. Arrogantly stated, Master, the human woman inside is definitely still alive, but has just entered a dormant period. Under the instincts of the defense mechanism, the energy of the extremely cold nature is faintly glowing in the body. This entire iceberg should be it was her body's emergency response, ice-type energy, Kyle muttered to himself, then shook his head and smiled. It seems that not only him, even Lucy got some chances to step into the path of evolution after leaving the Earth. The rich rely on technology, the poor rely on mutation. This sentence also contains another meaning, that is, anyone can become a strong Superman. The Marvel Universe is such a world full of miracles and magic. Master, do you want me to transform into Transformer mode, cut open the iceberg, and rescue Miss Lucy? Wacy couldn't help suggesting, seeing that arrogance had stolen its limelight. Farewell, just your Transformer mode, so don't accidentally hurt Lucy. Kyle shook his head decisively, stepped forward arrogantly, and took the opportunity to second, yes, this method is too barbaric. Wacy was speechless for a while. It is an intelligent mechanical life, and its thinking logic is a rational program system. This is the first time someone called it barbaric. Okay, you all stand back a little and let me do it myself. Kyle waved his hand and said. Weiss immediately transformed back into a small robot, stepped back together with arrogance, and stood with the snail maid, a safe distance of about 10 meters from the iceberg. Kyle took a deep breath, running the fire energy from the Protus gene, and his whole body was immediately surrounded by a faint golden flame, and the palm of his left hand that touched the surface of the iceberg became even more red-hot like a soldering iron. The snail maid, Wacy, arrogant, and fearful stepped back another 10 meters, but the cold and biting air had also begun to reverse the trend of scorching hot summer. Zzzz. The 10,000-year-old ice, which cannot be shaken by the lava, melted continuously at a speed visible to the naked eye in the hands of Kyle, the incarnation of Vulcan, as if opening a passage leading to the belly of the iceberg. With his left hand in front of him, Kyle melted the ice and began to move forward, stepping deeper into the iceberg. 10 seconds later, Kyle was about 1 meter away from where Lucy was. From a close look, Lucy in white looked like a sleeping beauty sleeping in an ice coffin, with slender eyelashes, golden hair, and fair skin. Everything and the years are frozen 5 years ago. It's time to wake up, Lucy, Kyle muttered softly. The fire energy controlled by his left hand melted the last meter of solid ice diaphragm. The moment the solid ice melted, Lucy's suspended body fell forward. Kyle restrained the fire energy on his body, and happened to embrace her in his open arms. He buried his face in the golden hair, and the familiar fragrance wafted into his nostrils. Long time no see. Kyle smiled in relief, and hugged Lucy quietly, smelling her body, as if willing time to stay in this moment, forever. Lucy's eyelashes trembled, and she slowly opened her beautiful blue eyes. When she realized that she was hugged by a tall man, she instinctively wanted to break free, but her resistance stopped at the next moment. Kyle, is that you? Lucy's voice was trembling when she asked. Although she didn't see the other person's face, the strength and gesture of the hug were the same as the person in her long memory. It's not me, who else could be? Kyle responded with a chuckle. After being confirmed, Lucy hugged him forcefully, with faint tears in her beautiful eyes. She sobbed excitedly. Kyle, the universe is too vast and dangerous. I'm afraid that I won't be able to return to Earth in this life, and I'm even more afraid that I won't see you again. It's your turn. It's okay. I'm here. Everything's okay. Patting Lucy on the back comfortingly, Kyle rarely showed a warm side, facing too many killings and battles, and only in front of the most important lover only then can he feel the precious thing called emotion again. The two maintained a hugging posture, after a brief meeting. Luzai suddenly remembered something, and hurriedly broke away from Kyle's arms, exclaiming, "By the way, Kyle, how long have I been sleeping in the ice?" Kyle blinked and said, "As far as I know, it should be 5 years." 5 years? Lucy was shocked, covered her surprised mouth, and said anxiously, "Oops. Logan was captured by the god Ego. It's been so long now, and he doesn't know. Are you still alive?" Kyle did not find Logan in the ice, and said in a deep voice, "Speak slowly. After Howard escaped from this planet 5 years ago, what happened to you and Logan? Also, why did you freeze?" "In the ice, it sank into the karst of the crater." Lucy took a few deep breaths, and after she calmed down, she answered Kyle's doubts one by one. Turned out to be when Lucy left Earth, she vaguely felt the energy awakening in her body. In order to avoid worrying Howard and Logan, she didn't tell them about it. This potential ice energy, Lucy hadn't used it a few times, until she escaped from Celestial Planet 5 years ago and was forced to fight with Yija, who was intercepting. This ice energy was fully used otherwise. With Logan's strength alone, even Howard would have no chance of escaping from Planet Ego. But despite the blessing of ice energy, Lucy and Logan are still no match for the god Ego. Logan was the first to pass out after a disastrous defeat. In order to prevent herself from falling into Yiji's hands, Lucy used the maximum ice energy to freeze herself. Lucy wrinkled her delicate nose, spread her hands and said, "That's how it happened. As for why the iceberg that froze me was put into the volcanic lava created by Ego, I don't know much about it. Maybe I understand." Kyle smiled, looking at the blue ability card that was like a talisman suspended over Lucy. "Maybe not even egg. Under the sun, there is actually a card ability that can passively immunize against natural disasters, the Shelter of the Elves. It was once regarded as a useless card, but it was handed out by Kyle during World War II, but it turned out to be Lucy's life-saving means." Chapter 418. The Second God, the Bloody Savage. When Kyle came out of the belly of the iceberg, Lucy, who had already recovered, held his hand affectionately, and the two came to the grassland area where the maid of the snail was. "Hello, madam, the Weesey of the robot body and the arrogance of the black mist spirit, both of them are very interesting." They came to Lucy one by one, and saluted respectfully. Okay, everything is fine. Taking care of Kyle, the master, is hard work." Lucy nodded with a smile. After greeting Weiss and arrogance, she was still as lively as before, and winked at Kyle playfully. "It seems that you have taken in a lot of family members." Kyle smiled without saying a word, looking at the heavy-faced snail maid, who seemed to have something to say. "Isn't this a little praying mantis?" Seeing the maid of the snail star, Lucy couldn't help walking forward, holding her hand and saying, "Thank you so much back then. If it wasn't for you, we might not have discovered this planet until we died." "The hidden truth, Lucy, it's great that you're okay." Mantis smiled sincerely. Lucy asked Kyle, "Kyle, you didn't bully the little mantis, did you?" Although she is a man of the god Ego, she is driven by others, but in fact, she is very kind and simple in her heart. She was the one who told her in secret back then. "Let's tell the truth and help Howard escape." "Of course not," Kyle replied calmly, which was the natural truth. "It's just that the Yuan devouring beast ate her once." "Really?" Lou hoped that Mantis' nervous and aggrieved little face showed a curt expression of dubious doubt. Mantis shook her head quickly, and said anxiously, "Okay. Miss Lucy, Mr. Kyle has been very kind to me. Now, you must escape from here immediately." "What's going on?" Seeing the high tension of the mantis, Kyle couldn't help but cast his doubtful eyes on the arrogant who had just stayed outside. "Master," arrogantly bowed, and quickly reported, "Not long before you entered the hinterland of the volcano, there was a powerful awakening energy, and the aftermath covered this entire planet of life. That is the awakening of the second god." After receiving its unfinished words, Mantis said fearfully, "Master Yigo has been secretly looking for the offspring lost outside the universe for more than 10 years, that is, Star-Lord Quill. Now Quill has obviously been assisted by him, awakened the power of the gods hidden in the body. Is his plan going to start?" Kyle had listened to Howard's analysis from beginning to end, and knew exactly what this meant. Praying Mantis nodded, "Yes, as long as Master Ego, together with the power of the gods in Quill's body, can give birth to the god seeds planted on thousands of living planets, the seeds will quickly take root and germinate, and the stars on the planet will all resources are devoured." When Lucy heard the words, she couldn't help showing shock, and looked at Kyle eagerly. "What should I do?" "The earth has also been planted with the so-called celestial seeds. It's very simple. Just don't let him have the opportunity to give birth to seeds. The serious situation is imminent, and Kyle is still calm and unpretentious. Looking at the sky on the other side of the planet, he said with emotion, "It's just that I didn't expect that even if I leave the Earth, I still have to fight to maintain the safety of the Earth. This, perhaps, is the symbol of peace, the destiny brought about by that title." At this moment, on the other side of the planet, under the surface of the Garden Palace, there is a primitive cave here. The ground is covered with luminous moss, and the roots of the trees are intertwined to form the wall. Although it is a closed underground environment, the air is smooth and fresh, with a faint fragrance of flowers. Egg, who is wearing a silver uniform, withdrew his hand from Quill's chest. Quill's body glowed with starlight, and he quickly returned to normal restrained. "Quill, how do you feel?" Egg looked at Quill with a smile on his face, with a deep sense of expectation in his eyes. "It feels like I can kill Ronan with one punch." Quill opened his eyes, clenched his fists, and then spread his hands and said, "I'm just kidding. I feel that the physical attributes have increased several times, and it seems that I can manipulate the surroundings at will." When Quill was talking, he waved his hand towards the roots of the tree. With a glow of blue light energy, the roots that formed part of the cave wall immediately began to vibrate slightly like a living snake. "This is the power of our celestial gods." Yujie raised his head arrogantly, opened his hands, and said, "Our celestial gods are above all things and races in the universe. You are not yet familiar with this awakening power. In the future, you will, if you use it freely, you will be able to create a planet under your own control. Not to mention mere Ronin, even a creature stronger than Ronin, you can smash it into pieces with one punch." "Really?" Quill looked down at his palm, wondering what he was thinking. "Okay, I'm going to do something first. You stay here for a while. I have something important to tell you later." Yujie couldn't wait. After waving his hands, his body quickly melted into the roots of the tree. The wall completely disappeared. Quill was bored, sitting on a chair made of natural roots, playing with a newly awakened god ability. "It's interesting. I can not only manipulate tree roots, but also feel that any corner of the planet can be freely detected and manipulated." Quill took a deep breath and began to explore the cave where he was located. His mind just went underground. After penetrating 10 meters, he was startled. In the ground further down, there is actually a mysterious person. Quill thought for a while, imitating Egg just now, and as the soil squirmed, he sank into the ground like this, falling 10 meters down, and finally sat down in the cave on the lowest floor. Pain, pain, pain. Quill got up from the ground, hugged his buttocks with both hands, looked up while suffering the pain, and saw a male savage with human appearance trapped in the depths of the cave on the second underground floor. The male savage's back was tightly pressed against the wall, his limbs and head were tightly entangled by tree roots, his whole body was as dry as sticks, his black hair and beard were extremely thick and vigorous. Obviously he had been trapped here for some time. His clothes were the tattered ones turned from white to grayish-black. The savage kept his head tilted and lethargic, and what was even more surprising was that several tree roots pierced into his heart, as if he was constantly sucking blood as nourishment. "Why, I seem to have seen him somewhere." Quill looked at the wild man's face. The hair covered most of his face, but the more he looked at him, the more familiar he became. Curious, Quill couldn't help but move forward, approached, and stretched out his hand to brush the wildling's drooping hair. The moment Quill's hand touched the hair, the savage suddenly woke up and trembled all over, opened his mouth and let out an angry growl, and the tough vines stretched to the limit under the strength of his body. Quill was startled, and hurriedly backed away, and then saw that the savage raised his hands instinctively, and protruded 3 sharp and cold steel claws from his clenched fists. "You are..." Quill's eyes widened, and at the same time, he saw the other person's face clearly. It was a file photo that Kyle had shown him on the electronic screen. Wolverine Logan. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419 Showdown with God. Inside the cave on the ground floor of the Garden Palace. "Are you Mr. Logan?" Quill couldn't help asking, looking at the wild man struggling madly. But the savage couldn't hear his voice at all. He looked like a wounded beast, lost the consciousness of being a human being, and only kept roaring angrily, struggling hard with his hands outstretched with steel blades and sharp claws. so that the tough tree roots and the vines strangled his body with deep blood stains. But the cage made of tree roots and vines seemed to be tailor-made for the wild man. With his weak body strength alone, there was no possibility of breaking free and escaping. Mr. Logan, can you hear my voice? Quill suddenly remembered something, and said, by the way, do you remember Mr. Howard? He asked us to save you. Hearing the name Howard, the savage raised his head in vain. His bloodshot eyes stared at Quill in front of him. He no longer roared angrily, and only let out a weak growl and whimper. Seeing some reaction, Quill couldn't help taking a breath, and then continued, then do you still remember Miss Lucy? She should be left on this planet with you. By the way, there is also Mr. Kyle. You remember the name Kyle? When the savage heard Lucy's name, his expression softened a lot, and the frenzy and wildness on his body gradually dissipated after hearing Kyle's name. The savage's vicissitudes of face froze slightly, and then his body trembled violently again. When Quill thought that the other party was losing his mind again, the savage suddenly said hoarsely, you, why, know that name, you are indeed Mr. Logan. Quill took a deep breath and replied, you don't know. Mr. Kyle, he came to the Galaxy Union to find you. Later we met Mr. Howard, and from him, we knew 5 years ago, you and Miss Lucy were left on this planet. Really, patriarch, he came to see me, Logan muttered to himself. Bloody tears flowed from his dry and sunken eye sockets. Quill comforted, don't worry. He should come to this planet to save you soon. No. Logan was irritated, his hair was blown all over, and he said hurriedly and hoarsely, don't let him come here. Stop him, it's dangerous. This place is very dangerous, Uncle. You have become like this, and you still have the mind to take care of Mr. Kyle. Quill spread his hands, and said bluntly, I can't do it. Let's not say that I can dissuade Mr. Kyle, just because of Mr. Kyle's domineering temper. If he knows that you have been made like this planet will probably be ravaged by him. It's crappy. I'd better get you out first. Quill opened his palm, and with the power of the gods running, the blue light illuminated the entire cave, and the roots and vines that were wrapped around Logan's body like iron chains began to slowly loosen to both sides. Pada. Logan fell from the wall and lay half kneeling on the ground. Quill quickly stepped forward to help him up. With his dry feet trembling slightly, Logan stood up with difficulty, and thanked Quill. Thank you. I haven't asked yet, who are you and why are you here? I am. Before Quill could answer, there was a clear sound of footsteps landing behind him, making his words and face froze for an instant. Logan's keen hearing has not declined. Hearing the abnormal noise, he and Quill looked back together, only to see Egg in his silver uniform looking at the two of them with a sinking face. Ego, filled with endless anger. Logan stretched out a steel blade and sharp claws subconsciously. Quill was even faster, blocking him in one step, and said to Egg, he is my friend. Egg said coldly, son, Quill. Did you know that? 5 years ago, as an interstellar thug, he forced his way into my territorial planet and killed countless kind-hearted native creatures. Bah! Logan put his hand on Quill's shoulder, spat out a mouthful of bloody sputum, then took a deep breath, and reluctantly retorted, you fart. Logan, except that I accidentally killed the first family member, after getting Kyle after the Patriarch's redemption. Until now, all the villains who deserve their crimes have been killed. And you treat all creatures as the nourishment of the planet. Whoever is the executioner knows in his heart. The two each held a word, and Quill looked hesitant, as if he didn't know who to choose to believe. Egg looked at Quill quietly, and said softly, Quill, you have to be clear, I am your family, and those on your side are thugs who want to invade our home planet. Stretching out his hand forward, you just said kindly, son, come here. Stand by my side. From bloodline to identity, we are a family. Quill bowed his head and thought about it, and couldn't help but take a step forward. After his mother on Earth died of a serious illness, he has been wandering in the Galaxy Federation for many years, and what he has been looking for is the warm word family. Seeing that Quill was about to walk towards Egg, Logan said hoarsely, Quill, right? Don't believe that bastard's nonsense. Your mother, Meredith, was killed by this seemingly kind biological father in front of you. Yiji's face changed slightly. Quill turned around suddenly, excitedly grabbed Logan's collar, and asked loudly, what did you just say? Logan said hoarsely, I said, your mother Meredith was killed by Ego. Ego has come to the underground cave many times to show off his ambition and plan to devour the starry sky. It is said that 28 tumor was intentionally planted on your mother years ago, saying that the so-called love with humans is just to reproduce offspring who inherit the blood of the gods. After you are born, your mother will no longer be needed. Your mother died of cancer, didn't she? After Logan finished speaking, Quill's face turned livid, and he turned back to look at Egg, with an extremely cold tone. Is what he said true? Egg, Yu just sighed softly, and said helplessly, actually, I want to tell you slowly later. Why? Why did you do that? Quill clenched his fists tightly, his nails digging into his palms, but the tingling in his heart was even worse. Son, you will know later. Yu just stepped forward and persuaded, we Celestials have endless life and power. Your mother is just a lowly human being. She can only live for 100 years if she dies. She can't compare with us at all, so you killed her. Quill couldn't accept it. Looking at Egg, who was walking forward, holding the laser pistol at his waist with both hands, he said angrily, stop. Also, don't call me son, you are not worthy. Yu just stopped, and the warmth on his face dissipated, replaced by emotionless indifference. Forget it. I wanted to accompany you to play the role of a loving father, but it seems that it is unnecessary now, you bastard. Quill quickly drew out his guns, but before they were loaded, Logan behind him exclaimed, be careful, and pushed Quill hard. Quill fell to the side and fell to the ground. Looking sideways, he saw that Logan's back was pierced by a green vine spike, protruding from his chest, and scarlet blood dripped along the vine. I'm going to suck the blood of you, a savage human right here. Besides, Quill, the power of the gods in your body also belongs to me. Egg raised his hands, his body glowed with a faint blue light, and his body was filled with powerful power of the gods. He finally stopped acting, exposing his cold, cruel, and ruthless villain face. Chapter 420 Showdown with God. Even though the upper body was pierced by vine spikes, Logan's face didn't change much, as if he had long been used to this level of pain. He stretched the steel claw of his left hand back, and swiped it with a little force, cut off the tough vines. Puff. Logan fell to his knees on the ground, retracted his sharp claws with the other hand, and pulled out a section of vine left in his body forcefully. A large amount of blood spilled on the ground, leaving a bloody hole in his chest. The nutrition is seriously deficient, and even the self-healing effect of the self-healing factor, the speed of repairing the wound has become extremely slow. Mr. Logan. Quill was about to step forward to help Logan, but before he took a step, Logan waved his hand weakly to stop him, and said hoarsely, leave me alone, go, get out of here, damn it. Quill clenched his fists, turned around and rushed towards the wall without thinking too much. Want to run? Yu waved his hands, and the whole cave trembled suddenly. Tree roots, vines, soil and gravel all became like living things, and they all swept towards Quill's body. Wow, Quill exclaimed. Blue light energy emerged from his body, the power of the gods was like a protective shield, and everything bounced off before it approached him. While Egg was in a daze, Quill glanced at Logan for the last time, plunged headlong into the wall, and quickly opened up a path to escape upwards. I didn't expect you to master the power of the gods so quickly. You are worthy of being my descendant. But this whole planet is my body, where should you escape? Yu just sneered and didn't care. Logan, who was seriously injured and weak, chased towards the surface in the direction of Quill's escape. Garden Palace, in the luxurious hall on the first floor. Quill, who escaped from the cave, was running towards the door with all his strength, wanting to go to the garden outside and activate his starfighter to escape from this ghost place. Boom. As the floor cracked ahead and the soil caved in, Egg broke through the ground, just blocking Quill's path. Listen to me. Quill, together, we can become the real master of this starry sky. Egg still wanted to try to persuade him, but Quill didn't hesitate at all. He took out the double laser guns on his waist and pulled the trigger at Egg, who was his biological father. The laser beams fell on Ego's body intensively, and part of his body burst and festered immediately, but there was no real flesh and blood, only the inner pure blue energy structure was revealed. It turns out that Ego's body is a planet of life, and the human body is just an incarnation shaped by the power of the gods. There are thousands of similar biological incarnations. In order to break through the boundaries of biological isolation, and continue to mate and breed. Descendants of the power of the gods. In other words, neither the damage nor the death of Ege's Avatar could directly affect his planet itself. You killed my mother, you bloody alien bastard. Quill held a gun, staring coldly at Egg's rotting human avatar. I created you. Ege angrily switched his avatar appearance, his feet turned into an electric light energy flow, which was transmitted to the lower layers and connected to the body center of the living planet. The earth roared and trembled slightly, and Quill turned back consciously, but it was still a step too late. With a huge and terrifying daytime energy flow, the giant stab formed fiercely penetrated Quill's body from behind, piercing his body. Lift the body off the ground. Humans are indeed lowly creatures. If not, among the many descendants, only you have inherited the only gene of the gods, and you are only worthy of being my nourishment like those lowly creatures. There is also Yondu. I originally gave him the resources to create the Star Hunter fleet. He just needs to help me bring the offspring here. Who knows, Yondu secretly saved you, delaying me for more than a dozen years. Years, Egg's voice echoed in the palace hall. He borrowed the power of the gods from the main body to repair the human incarnation, manipulated the raging energy flow in the hall, hung Quill in midair, and said fiercely, "But now, you still obediently become a rechargeable battery for me. Invoke the power of the gods." Quill let out a tragic wail, and the power of the gods flowed out of his body, all of which were forcibly extracted by Ego's energy thrusts and taken as his own. Yuja showed a happy expression, and could clearly feel that the power of the gods, which was originally at the bottleneck of the main body, received a steady stream of energy gains at this time, and finally had enough energy to give birth to those plants planted on thousands of living planets. Celestial seed. Devour the entire starry sky with just one thought. I am God. Before the smile on Yigo's face was fully revealed, the top floor of the palace suddenly exploded, and in his wide-eyed pupils, a small starfighter crash-landed in the hall of the palace, and by the way, his human incarnation was sent to the palace hall. Grinded into powder. The energy spur collapsed out of control, and Quill fell from the air to the ground. Just as he got up from the ground, clutching his wound, he saw the hatch of the starfighter open when he looked up. A bald-headed man with a dark blue complexion walked out of it, and grunted at Quill, "You bastard, you ran here to die without saying anything. I'm your guardian, have you asked me?" Yondu, seeing the person coming, Quill's heart warmed up, suddenly realized that perhaps he was not without family. "We have to get out of here quickly." Yondu looked around solemnly. The palace buildings were disintegrating themselves, the earth was shaking in earthquakes, and the energy flow was raging everywhere, which was a sign that Yigo's body was about to recover. "No, I can't." Quill shook his head, and said hastily, "The moment I just awakened the power of the gods, I can feel that there is the brain center of the bastard ego in the core of the planet. We must kill him, lest he continue to harm the universe." Yondu looked at him seriously, and questioned, "With our strength, how can we kill a living planet? Then at least, wait until I rescue Logan from the ground." Quill struggled to use the power of the gods and touched the surface of the hall. Just as his mind penetrated a little, the chaotic energy and vibration in the hall suddenly stopped. "You did this?" Yondu asked inexplicably. "Of course not." Quill was also surprised, with a strange expression on his face. He continued to probe, and was surprised to find something. There is an alien invasion, and he is constantly digging and breaking through another place under the planet. Egg concentrates on dealing with it. While Yondu was still confused, Quill said excitedly, "It's Mr. Kyle, definitely Mr. Kyle. Except for him. No one can make Ego treat him so cautiously, and he has no time to take care of us." As he said, at this moment, the planet Ego is 1,000 meters below the ground. Kyle's whole body was spontaneously combusted, ignited and lingering with colorful flames, fists in front of him, flying at the speed of light and constantly blasting the ground, digging deeper into the ground below. Chapter 421 Showdown with God. All the way down. Under the blessing of fusion energy all over his body, Kyle seemed to turn into a stream of light, and the soil, tree roots, stones, and even hard metal minerals under the surface of the planet Yigo all bounced away to the surroundings without hindrance. His flight goes deep. 1 kilometer, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers. It is obviously a magnificent and stalwart planet of life, but at this time in front of Kyle, it is as fragile as paper and can be torn apart. This is also a matter of course. After all, after Vulcan's divine power is mixed with the energy of the original space stone, the energy priority is already at the top of the universe, and it cannot be resisted by ordinary energy or matter. Facing this kind of brainless house-stealing offensive, the god Ego, who is the main body of the planet, finally panicked, and had to withdraw his mind from the Garden Palace first, and focus on dealing with the powerful enemy who had approached. "Okay," Kyle clenched his fist in front of him, flying like a Superman, and after penetrating through a thick and hard surface, the kilometer-deep underground was actually hollow. Many fluorescent plants came into view. These tree roots and vines form thin tubes, just like the capillaries in the human body, full of exuberant vitality and impressive power. Kyle hovered in this area. Weiss, who has a smartwatch, flashed the green light slightly, and muttered softly, "Is this the body of the Celestials? It's really a bit disgusting. There are some radiation and biological signals intertwined here." Before Kyle could speak, a faint black mist appeared on his body. The mist formed a mouth and nose, and said, "Master, I'll go down and investigate." "Go." Kyle nodded lightly, and the arrogant evil spirit immediately left his body, blowing down like a gust of wind, and disappeared in the shadow of the underground green plants. Compared with the other 6 sins, arrogance is much more practical. Although its temperament is a bit cold and arrogant, it is diligent and bright in its work. Although Kyle cannot be increased as a bodiless spirit body, it is also good as a scouting subordinate. "Master, there is something over there." Not to be outdone, Weesey gave full play to his radio wave detection level and gestured to a place not far ahead. Kyle flew over there, and saw moss and green plants in the corner of the underground fold, and a pile of bone remains from different creatures underneath. Weiss radiated a blue light curtain, glanced at the bones, and responded, "Boss, from these bones, genes similar to this planet have been detected, and they are probably the original aborigines, or the incarnation of the god ego bred and bred them offspring. I'm afraid it's the latter. With Yeegee's inhumane and brutal nature, he probably doesn't want to evolve into native creatures in his body. It's just that I didn't expect that he would really incarnate into different races for hybridization. There will be no all descendants who inherited the power of the gods were killed." Kyle shook his head indifferently. This kind of behavior is already close to nature, without any emotion possessed by a living being. Yeejek, a planet with self-awareness and trying to devour the starry sky, is simply 100 times more inhumane than Thanos. Drip drip. Weesey suddenly sounded a warning. "Boss, there is a huge consciousness and energy complex approaching here. I've noticed it, it's true. If you say Ciao, Ciao will be here." Kyle looked sideways, and saw a giant energy bomb that was as bright as daylight flying towards this side at a high speed from the end of the underground fault space. The energy bomb skimmed over the green plants, still absorbing the energy overflowing from the ground, and continued to grow, completely covering the field of vision in the blink of an eye. Competing for energy, Kyle raised his eyebrows coldly, and didn't dodge. The palm of his left hand was open to block him. As soon as he finished this action, the energy bomb fell completely on the palm. The gigantic energy bomb that dazzled during the day came to an abrupt end. Opposite it, what competed with it was the dazzling starlight in Kyle's hand, the cosmic energy obtained from the space stone. Zzzz, 2 kinds of extreme terrifying energies, one big and one small, are intertwined and confronting each other, and the aftermath of the power that only slightly overflows will crush the surrounding soil into powder, and turn the shimmering fluorescent green plants into fly ash. How can that be? Under the ground deeper in the planet, a giant human face made of ideas and energy felt even more unbelievable, looking in horror at the human youth hardwired to the energy bomb. To know. It is not an ordinary energy combination, but is composed of pure power of gods, comparable to the infinite power of nature. Even the planets will tremble under one blow for tens of thousands of years. No living beings have been able to face this devastating attack of the gods on the planet Ego. How did Ego know that Kyle's fusion energy was partly derived from one of the 6 gemstones containing the mysteries of the universe? Even the top-notch technology of Nova could break through the protective net of fighter planes, and Carrie's supreme intelligence tried to control it but couldn't succeed. "Go away," Kyle snorted softly, no longer limited to his left palm, but even his arms, body, and even hair, were all entwined with energy glare. Double star form. In just an instant, the confrontational balance of the 2 energies was broken. Kyle's left hand was deeply immersed in the energy bomb. As the arm and wrist twisted, the round energy ball was twisted into a twist immediately, and then burst like a balloon inflated to the limit and open. The white waves and tides of the aftermath of the energy of the gods rushed towards the surroundings, and everything within a kilometer radius was crumbled and shattered inch by inch from the inside to the outside. Dazzling Kyle in the form of a double star, with his arms in front of him, rolled up and down in the waves of energy. Call out. Kyle vaguely saw another ball of energy bombs flying towards him at a very high speed, and before he had time to think about it, he quickly kicked it. But before kicking the energy bomb, the middle of the energy body was automatically sunken and separated, forming a giant human mouth, which happened to bite Kyle's left foot hard. "Intruder, I'm going to turn you into fertilizer for this planet." At the same time, a powerful idea that went straight to Kyle's heart roared. "God, it's you who deserves to be damned. You almost took away my important things." Kyle's tone was cold. He swung his fist wrapped in glare, and blasted out with a red beam of light, directly blasting the energy body, biting his foot into two halves. "I don't know you," Egg growled angrily. "It's not important. What's important is that you are about to die by my hands." Kyle couldn't care less about strategies, or methods, and didn't bother to think too much about them, only conforming to the anger and the blood-boiling fighting will, running the surging fusion energy with all its strength, fitting and increasing every inch of steel-like muscles, and wrestling with a powerful energy body constructed by Yi-Ji's body freely. All of a sudden, there was an undercurrent under the surface, centered on the battle situation between Kyle and Ego. As the center of the storm, the shock wave could be sensed even tens of kilometers away. Underground of the Garden Palace. Logan was holding on to the trembling wall. The cave had begun to collapse, and it was about to bury him alive. A hand suddenly rested on his shoulder. "Uncle Logan, hurry up and get out of this damn place with me." That was Quill, who turned back. He struggled to use the power of the gods, and while supporting the weak Logan, he opened a way to escape. Chapter 422. Do Gods Bleed? Boom boom boom. The main entrance of the Garden Palace. Star-Lord Quill and Yondu supported the weak and seriously injured Logan from left to right, almost dragging him, and escaped from the ruins of the collapsed palace. In the process of escaping, the ground shook and earthquakes continued, making their evacuation extremely difficult. "The gods are fighting. This is the gods fighting. Let's get out of here." Quill swallowed his saliva and said hastily. "Did you awaken the power of the gods?" "Fuck him." Yondu looked at Quill with contempt, and pouted. Quill shook his head vigorously, and said with a wry smile, "How can I compare myself to that planet monster, you little monster?" Just as Yondu was about to say something sarcastically, he suddenly raised his head vigilantly, whistled a little, and suddenly a dark red arrow flew out of his head, dragging the trail of the tail light, and shot toward the bushes in the garden ahead. It was an ordinary arrow, but it was faster than a laser, and it was about to sink into the bushes in the blink of an eye. Hoo-hoo, the red arrow was still on the way to strike, when a white cold current suddenly blew in front of it, and the modified technological metal red arrow, and even the bushes were instantly frozen into solid ice. "Is there an enemy?" Quill hurriedly stopped and carried Logan on his back alone, so that Yondu could free up his hands to deal with the enemy. Yondu frowned deeply, whistled again. This time the whistle was urgent and sharp. The red arrow suddenly broke free from the ice, dragged the red light arc, and returned to the empty palm the same way. "Who? No more come out. I'm not welcome." What a powerful little red arrow, with a crisp laughter like a bell. A blonde girl in a white dress, like a forest elf, stepped out from behind the frozen bushes. "Yondu, don't do it yet." Quill stopped Yondu, who was about to whistle, looked at the person in front of him again, and shouted in surprise, "You are Miss Lucy? Kyle asked me to pick you up." Lucy chuckled, and the wounded Logan on Quill's back trembled slightly, and said excitedly with tears in his eyes, "It's great that you're still alive, Logan." "You too, Lucy." Logan raised his heavy eyelids and responded weakly, "It's over." Seeing the scarred Logan, Lucy couldn't help repeating what Kyle had just said. Quill couldn't help asking, "Now, is it really Mr. Kyle who is fighting that Yigo?" Lucy nodded, looked up at the disintegrated green land, and said confidently, "Let's prepare the escape spaceship first. This planet will soon be destroyed." At this time, under the ground of planet Yigo, the humanoid Kyle entwined with glare energy, and the head of Ego mixed with consciousness and energy, are engaged in an alternative battle that is melee but bombarded by the main energy. Kyle is like a self-igniting and sublimated little light man. Every punch and every kick, in addition to hundreds of tons of superhuman strength, will be accompanied by a powerful and extremely destructive energy bombardment. The latter is Kyle's greatest capital against the god Ego. Ego's body is this planet. On the premise of not destroying this planet, if he wants to cause effective damage to it, he can only use the elements and energy system. The attack went to strike. With a punch, it was like a missile with explosive power, and thanks to the god Ego, no one would be able to withstand this terrifying attack. The structure formed by Ego was blown up again and again by Kyle, and quickly reorganized as before. Yuja really couldn't figure out why, in his own home field, in a protracted battle of star-level energy, even a small creature on the other side could contend against Do now. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. Yuja roared angrily, opened his bloody mouth, and spit out a beam of energy light from the mouth of the void, directly blasting Kyle in double star form. Kyle kept rolling backwards, smashing the underground rock formation tens of meters away. With energy protection, he got up again without incident, and jumped out with his pedals. It smashed again. Tough guy. In the hollow fault in the ground, countless disordered and free blue natural energies, driven by the thoughts of the gods, reassembled into a giant energy structure that resembled Yi-Ji's face. In my territory, you can't beat me. Ego's structure was suspended in the air, looking at Kyle, who was panting and glare, and said coldly, "If you don't try, how will you know?" Not much to say. Kyle clenched his fists, swung forward with practical actions, and blasted out a miniature scorching energy beam with his fists alone, blasting a large hole between the eyebrows of Ego's structure. Tickle, Yi just sneered again and again. From all directions of the ground, the power of nature surged up continuously, and the wound gap of the energy structure was repaired at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although the energy structure has been hit and even smashed countless times, as long as it doesn't endanger the root, it will remain invincible, calling on the energy of the planet itself to repair it infinitely. This is the horror of the gods. From the very beginning, Kyle was not fighting a creature, but was fighting a decisive battle with the natural environment and the entire planet of life. Egg sneered at Kyle, "In my territory, it is impossible for me to lose. I have the huge energy of this entire planet, and when the energy in your body is always exhausted, how can you compare with me? By the way, you reminded me." Kyle was not angry, but smiled lightly. "Indeed, no matter how many times you kill your energy incarnation, it will have no effect. Therefore, you must target your Achilles heel." Huh? Yi-Ji's face changed slightly, and he suddenly had an ominous premonition. At this moment, a cloud of black mist floated out from the ground at a very high speed, approached Kyle slightly, and conveyed his thoughts. "Master, I found the brain of this living planet at about 650 kilometers underground. A consciousness center, and a living heart, the thought body of a different kind of life." Egg's energy structure watched the black mist creature approaching Kyle, and couldn't help but set off a storm in his heart. It had been focusing on Kyle just now, and it didn't realize that there was another weak thought at all the existence of the body. Yes, weak for Egg. The evil spirit of arrogance couldn't be weaker. After hearing the report, Kyle nodded towards arrogance, and replied with his thoughts. Arrogance obviously knew that he was in danger, and immediately floated back to Kyle in a circle. "What's that?" Egg asked in a deep voice, changing from his previous arrogance. The corners of Kyle's mouth raised. He looked at the structure with a half smile, and asked calmly, "I really want to know, will the gods bleed? If you don't bleed, it will be difficult. I have a material for an artifact, but I need to use it, the blood of the gods. What do you want to do? Tell me." Egg's structure opened its mouth wide, spewing out several beams of dazzling energy beams in succession, but this time Kyle did not choose to forcefully shake, but landed a fist under the ground, blasting out black paint. The hole in the paint. The moment he avoided the energy beam, the whole person turned upside down and continued to dig deeper into the ground. Constantly accelerating, he dived deep into the ground. This time he no longer dug blindly, and seemed to move forward at a high speed with a goal. This behavior completely exposed Kyle's intentions. The egg construct was stunned for a while, and then shouted in horror, "Wait, wait! Damn it! You can't do that!" Chapter 423. The new book I Come From the Future of Marvel begins to be serialized simultaneously. The new book I Am From the Future of Marvel began to be serialized simultaneously. Tell everyone a big news. My second Marvel fanbook I Come From the Future of Marvel movies adapted from Marvel's Revenge, including Avengers IV, a collection of 22 Marvel hero movies, have been officially serialized since today. The introduction is as follows. Marvel Cinematic Universe, 2510 BC. Due to the opening of multidimensional time and space, monsters such as zombies, giants, and monsters invaded, and the Marvel dimension finally ushered in the end of destruction. The Federal General Sekirolu Oxiu was reborn after the apocalypse, using the reincarnation system to travel back and forth to historical events such as World War II, the Great War in New York, and Thanos snapping his fingers. He vowed to change the historical trend of Marvel 500 years ago, save the original heroes such as Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor, so as to reverse the hellish future full of despair. Marvel's IO does not hinder reading. I hope that all book lovers will join in, collect and add to the bookshelf, and recommend votes for new books as appropriate. and new books will be serialized on a daily basis. The Marvel card draw here will not be interrupted because of this, and it will be updated daily until the end. It is estimated that there are about 40 words left, so feel free to eat. Thank you for your continued support. Chapter 424. The planet Yigo, the underground fault space under thousands of miles. Under Yige's furious anger, the entire planet began to gather energy towards the core, so that this area was like the center of a storm, with dozens of energy streams raging in it. None of you can escape. Inside the eye of the storm, Wisi and the starfighter merged into one, transformed into a super large transformer mode, and opened the laser cannon to resist the bombardment of the energy flow. Quill left the cabin and used the power of the newly awakened god to pull and strip the energy of the planet. Mantis also uses her psychic powers, grabbing a transmission tube, implying that a construct avatar falls asleep. Lucy and Yondu cut off the energy channels one by their own methods of freezing and controlling arrows. Even so, Luzai and the others were still retreating steadily, and soon almost shrunk back into a ball, and all the surrounding sites turned into a vast ocean submerged by the energy tide. This is the end. The endless energy flow merged into Yigo's ferocious human face. He opened his mouth wide and was about to blast out the energy cannonballs, but at this moment, the face's complexion changed abruptly, and the energy flow transformed into a solid body began to flow out. Collapse. How is this possible? No, don't, Egg muttered to himself, then yelled in horror, staring at Quill directly in front of him with empty eye sockets. Quill also lowered his head, looking at his hands. The power of the gods wrapped around his palms. The light began to dim and usher in the disappearance trend. His power is inherited from Egg, and when Egg dies, he will lose the power of the gods. Quill took a deep breath, raised his eyes, and said coldly, "You are the one who ends, Egg. You were created by me. If I die, you will become immortal forever." Before Yuji could finish his words of resentment, the structure completely disintegrated into a light mist. At the same time, the vibrations in the ground became more intense, and the rock formation above his head began to be cracked and crumbling. If the center is destroyed, the planet will perish. It's nice to be immortal. Also, I found my family, Quill whispered to himself, and glanced at Yondu with a relieved expression on his side. It seems that the boss has succeeded. Wisi stood beside the crowd, using his huge steel body to block the falling rock formations for them. Complying with its words, a human-shaped glare flew out from the metal mountain, and hovered in front of everyone abruptly. With a strong light hiding and restraining, Kyle in the uniform of interstellar space appeared. "Kyle!" Lucy jumped up in surprise and put her hands on Kyle's shoulders, her delicate body trembling slightly, said excitedly, "Logan, he is still alive and well, and he is now in the fighter cabin." "That's right. I knew it. He is our lone wolf who is almost immortal. How could he die on this planet so easily?" Kyle nodded in relief, sighed, and glanced at the other people on the field. "Let's get out of here by fighter plane. This planet is about to be completely destroyed and disappeared." Quill and Yondu looked at each other and said in unison, "Okay." Wisi transformed from a transformer back to the original fighter plane, crawled on the ground, and the hatch opened automatically, allowing Luzai and others to directly enter the cabin. "Rest in peace, Master." When the others boarded the fighter planes one after another, Mantis looked sad, and finally looked at the lifeless metal mountain as farewell, and followed Luzai, who was waving at her without hesitation. When everyone entered the cabin, the starfighter ignited and started, heading towards the gap in the formation. A dozen red lasers were in front, rotating and cutting open the underground passage, and leaving at full speed towards the upper surface. 5 minutes later, a dusty orange-blue interstellar fighter left the skull-like crimson planet and fled to other galaxies. Not long after leaving, the planet Ego was turned into nothingness in the universe in a series of explosions. Inside the fighter cabin, Kyle released the double star form, and his breathing has changed from rapid to even, but his body is still emitting a little heat. Luzai hugged his shoulders with both hands, and the two came to the seat where Logan was half lying in a coma. This long-lost reunion still left them in a trance. "Weiss, how is his body?" Kyle looked carefully at Logan, with his incomparably vicissitudes of face, his hair with white roots, his whole body as thin as dry wood, and the shocking penetrating wound on his chest. "You know, in front of you is a Wolverine planted with Edmund metal. From this, it can be seen how much disaster Logan has endured alone in the past 5 years. Learn." Weiss broke away from the inner wall of the fighter plane, and the small robot jumped onto the armrest of Logan's seat. After scanning with a medical laser, he concluded, the nutrition in his body is seriously deficient, and the self-healing factor. Most of them fall into a deep sleep state, but they are not life-threatening. As long as they are injected with nutritional potions, they can sleep well and rest for a period of time. That's good. During this time, you will take care of him. Kyle nodded and ordered directly. Yes. Weiss took the lead, jumped onto Logan's arm, and automatically transformed into an electronic watch to monitor Logan's physical condition at any time. He'll be fine, Kyle, Lucy whispered in Kyle's ear. Of course he will be fine. In the future, he will still be my right-hand man, fighting and killing enemies for me. Kyle smiled indifferently, looked at the people in the cockpit, and mainly said to Quill, Quill, I have found the person I should be looking for. Please, your business is completely over. You are free, but before that, you have to send us back to Picos first. While driving the fighter plane, Quill responded heartily, no problem, on that planet, I promised Brown Bear and Gamora to give them a ride. Now, we are also heading in the direction of Picos. That's good. Kyle calmed down a little. In this way, if he gets the soul gem again, this trip to the starry sky will be considered complete, and the time to return to Earth is just around the corner. Picos. The sun was setting, and night was covering the vast wilderness of the ruins of civilization. A little starlight lit up in the dark night sky, and then enlarged into a bright disk. It wasn't until it landed at a certain height that it was clear that it was a starfighter glowing with light. Strange, it should be this location. Where is the building during the day? Did you go to the wrong place? Quill, who was in the driver's seat, was deeply surprised, and manipulated the fighter plane to approach the surface. The lights shone brightly, and all he saw was a piece of civilized garbage and ruins. Problemmakers. Kyle's face turned cold in an instant. Before the fighter plane landed, he opened the hatch very quickly, carried Lucy in his arms, flew down and landed, and arrived at the sunken ground with some charred black bricks and tiles. I can never remember wrongly, this is the original daytime, the original side of Howard's building. Oh my god. Controlling the fighter plane, Quill cast a light in the distance, and the few people who were still in the cabin couldn't help but gasp. But the land with a radius of, meters was billowing with gunpowder smoke. Apparently, an extremely cruel battle had passed. The corpses of monsters wearing steel armor lay everywhere on the ground, and the dark brown blood stained the ruined land. Chapter 425 The Battle for Rough Stones officially begins. As a burst of dust kicked up, the starfighter slowly landed on the wasteland, the hatch opened, and Quill and his party walked out, behind Kyle and Lucy, looking at the messy land of ruins under the light of the fighter plane. What the hell happened here? Lucy's face was full of horror, and she covered her small mouth with one hand to avoid screaming, while the other hand tightly grasped Kyle's arm. Obviously they were attacked by unknown forces, but who dares to take action against the brown bears who are the new star VIPs? Quill said in surprise. Kyle was also deeply puzzled by this. There are two top powers in the Galactic Federation, one is Carrie, and the other is Nova. After the Ronin incident, both of them knew how powerful he was, and they would never do anything to the person he protected. As for the scattered star hunters, they didn't have the capital to challenge Tony and the others. The high-end combat forces staying here during the day include Iron Man Tony, Polaris Lorna, Tree Figure Groot, and Brown Bear Rocket. They are here, and they have surpassed the level of combat power of the original Guardians of the Galaxy. These creatures look familiar. Yondu frowned, walked forward a few steps, came to an armored creature, squatted down and looked at it. His face was always calm, and suddenly said in a deep voice, I remembered, it's Titan, under the forces led by that man, Titan. Hearing this name, Kyle's eyes turned cold as if facing a formidable enemy, his body and mind tensed up, his hands suddenly clenched into fists, and energy arcs faintly intertwined between his fingers. Quill touched his chin, remembering the previous content about the Infinity Gauntlet and gems, and exclaimed, could it be Thanos? Thanos, puff. 10 meters in front of everyone, under a pile of gravel, a painted steel arm suddenly protruded. Huh? Kyle reacted quickly, and came to the front with a stride, reached out to hold the palm covered with steel, and pulled it up, and suddenly a scarred Iron Man with a slight fault warning was lifted from the ground up. Kyle put it on the ground gently, crushed a broken steel mask, and immediately revealed the pale and bloodless face of Tony inside. Godfather, Tony barely opened his eyes, and saw that it was Kyle, and light appeared in his ashen eyes. You are finally back, Tony, tell me, what's going on here? Kyle asked. Tony coughed violently, supported the ground, barely stood up, and first said with difficulty, Jarvis, How long have I been in a coma? Where are those people? Jarvis responded, Sir, you have been in a coma for nearly 3 hours, and the enemy battleship has evacuated the planet 2.5 hours ago? 2.5 hours, it's too late. Tony gritted his teeth, blamed himself on Kyle on the side, and said, Godfather. 3 hours ago, we were suddenly attacked. The enemy was 2 interstellar battleships similar to donuts. There are many well-armed aliens, creatures and soldiers, and 2 very powerful aliens. My suit is no match at all. The battlesuit, which has always been invincible, was suddenly ravaged by an unprecedentedly powerful enemy and failed to protect the person he wanted to protect. This was an extremely cruel blow to Tony as Iron Man. After listening to Tony's words, Kyle whispered with certainty, It seems that it is really Thanos. Kyle, look over there. Suddenly, Lucy made a sound. Kyle and Tony looked around following the prompts, and saw a slightly bulging earth bag under the ruins not far away, and the earth bag was still expanding and getting bigger, and soon revealed the inner body wrapped by branches. Protective cage. The branch cage, which was the size of the second floor, collapsed and opened up, and there were 3 people lying intact inside, namely Howard, Rocket, and Dex. Father, Tony breathed out lightly, not caring about taking off the torn battle clothes, and ran forward in 2 steps and 3 steps. It was only when he found that Howard had just fainted and was fine, he breathed a sigh of relief. There were tears in the corners of Rocket's eyes, holding a branch and leaf in his paws. His face was sad and deep, and he didn't speak. Dex's bare upper body was covered with scars, and he patted Rocket's small shoulder comfortingly. Where are the others? Kyle glanced left and right, but did not see Lorna and Gamora. Dex gritted his teeth and said darkly, Those guys are here for Gamora. The little girl Lorna seems to have been taken away together. Before they left, they even released interstellar missiles to kill us. If it wasn't Groot, the tree man, who came to the rescue, it's dead. Groot is dead, and only this is left. Rocket finally couldn't help it, and shed 2 lines of tears, dripping on the dry branch in his hand. This is bad. The ensuing bad news shocked Kyle's heart. He didn't expect that such a big change would happen after leaving for a few hours. Thanos' subordinates took Gamora away, and they couldn't get the news about the location of the soul gem, so I won't mention it for the time being. On the other hand, Lorna, who has mastered the magnetic field ability, was taken away, which means losing a lot of high-end combat power. Mr. Kyle, can we seek revenge on that bastard Thanos? Rocket raised his eyes, looking at Kyle, who was the only one in the field who had the capital to compete with Thanos. Kyle frowned, thought quickly, and then said in a deep voice, Now that we faced Thanos, there are nothing more than 3 consequences. One is that we and part of Thanos' fleet will lose both. 1 escaped and survived. 3, we all died in the Titan galaxy. Thanos, is he so powerful? Quill couldn't help but feel chills on his back after hearing Kyle's words, but he knew how terrifying Kyle's combat power was. At this time, even Kyle treated him with unprecedented seriousness. That's right. And now that Thanos has kidnapped Gamora, he might get the soul gem soon. With the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, I don't even have the chance to beat him, Kyle said bluntly. Then let's just forget it, Rocket asked in disbelief. Of course, we can't just let it go. Lorna is still in their hands. Those who dare to attack me, Kyle shook his head decisively, narrowing his eyes dangerously and said, We need reinforcements, enough to fight the Thanos battleship, and the reinforcements under the forces have to control the other rough stones first. Otherwise, when the rest of the gems fall into the hands of Thanos, it will be a real cosmic catastrophe. Dex scratched his bald head and asked the crucial point, How do we know where the other gemstones are located? Kyle looked at Tony, then at Lucy, and said, Coincidentally, I just found out. First of all, exclude the location of the soul gem known by Gamora in the hands of Kyle alone. There are 2 rough stones of power and space. Then, the original carrier of the original space stone, the empty Rubik's Cube, is still in the SHIELD research room on the Earth. The original stone of time is kept by Gu Yi, the supreme mage of the Earth. The original soul stone is in the Mind Scepter, which is now in the hands of Thanos. Later, Thanos gave it to Loki and asked him to invade the Earth to snatch the original stone on a large scale. The original stone of reality has involved God's domain, but in the current time period, it seems to involve the Earth. In this way, Thanos also has 2 rough stones in his hands, namely the Soul Stone and the Soul Stone. It is, to me, and the remaining rough stones have some connection with the Earth. Kyle thought here, his complexion suddenly changed slightly. Wait a moment. If Thanos attacked the Earth first, then he would have no advantage in competing for the rough stones. Everyone, Kyle took a deep breath, glanced at everyone on the field, and said firmly as if giving an order, "Now, return to Earth immediately. Must be fast." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.